The Mafia boss saw the bride pull the chair out from under her own sister, and for one breath, every crystal glass in the Windermere Grand seemed to stop shining. Simone Bellamy hit the polished marble with a sound too heavy to be mistaken for drama. Her hand came down on the broken rim of a champagne flute, and the glass split her palm before anyone at the family table remembered how to move. Blood slipped between her fingers. A soft gasp rolled through the reception hall. Not the kind of gasp people gave when they cared. The kind they gave when something ugly happened in a beautiful room and they were afraid it would ruin the pictures. Delphine Vale, still Bellamy by birth but already wearing her new married name like a crown, stood above her in white satin and pearls, breathing hard through a smile that had cracked at the edges. Her veil shimmered down her back. Her diamond bracelet trembled on her wrist. Behind her, the head table was crowded with flowers, champagne, gold-rimmed plates, and relatives who had spent the last hour pretending not to see that Simone had been placed near the kitchen doors like a delivery error. Simone looked up from the floor and tasted copper in her mouth, though she had not bitten her tongue. That was strange. Then again, humiliation always seemed to have a flavor. Across the table, Walter Bellamy slammed his fist against the arm of his wheelchair. Once, twice, 3 times. The sound cracked through the room harder than the glass had. His mouth twisted with effort, his grey eyes bright and furious, his whole body leaning forward, as if anger alone could lift him from the chair. The stroke had stolen clean sentences from him. It had not stolen his mind. Simone knew that. Aunt Josephine knew that. Julian Marzano, watching from the shadowed edge of the ballroom, seemed to know it too, but most of the people in that room had learned to treat Walter's silence as permission. "Daddy, don't," Delphine whispered, too sharp to be sweet. Walter knocked again, 3 hard blows. Then his shaking hand reached for the tablet attached to his chair. Simone tried to stand, but the heel of her shoe slid in champagne, and pain shot through her palm. Aunt Josephine moved first. She was a small woman with silver hair, violet glasses, and the kind of church purse that looked harmless until it became a weapon. She shoved back from the table and bent toward Simone, her face pale with rage. "Don't touch her," Delphine snapped. Aunt Josephine looked up slowly. "Baby, I have been waiting 47 years for someone in this family to tell me what not to do." A few guests made nervous sounds. Someone laughed once, then swallowed it. Matteo Vale, Delphine's polished new husband, stood frozen beside his chair. He had the clean-cut beauty of a man who knew mirrors were on his side. Dark blonde hair, blue eyes. A tuxedo that probably cost more than Simone's car. He looked upset, but not surprised. Simone noticed that even through the pain, Matteo Vale looked at the shattered glass, at her bleeding hand, at Walter's tablet, and he did not look surprised. Then the music stopped. It did not fade. It stopped all at once, as if someone had cut the throat of the room. The man in black stepped out from the shadows near the ballroom entrance, and the air changed so completely that even Delphine turned. Julian Marzano walked like he had never needed to hurry in his life, because the world usually moved out of his way. He wore a black suit without a boutonniere, a dark shirt open at the throat, and no expression at all. His hair was black with a few silver threads near the temples. His face was calm, in a way that felt more dangerous than anger. Everyone in the city had heard his name, even if they pretended they had not. Owner of nothing, controller of everything, the kind of man respectable people denied knowing until they needed a problem solved quietly. Simone had met him before. Not here, not like this. 6 weeks earlier, he had been only an irritating man in a hospital hallway, with Italian shoes, a quiet voice, and the bad habit of standing exactly where stressed women with medical files needed to walk. Now he stopped beside Simone's fallen chair, looked first at her bleeding hand, then at Walter, then at Delphine. "Enough," Julian said. The word was soft. It still reached the farthest table. Delphine's cheeks flushed. "Mr. Marzano, this is a family matter." Julian's eyes moved to the chair lying on its side. "No, this is an assault in my hotel." "My sister is dramatic," Delphine said, laughing too brightly. She lost her balance. Simone pressed her napkin against her palm and let out a short, breathless sound that might have been a laugh if it had not hurt so much. "That is amazing, Delphine. I was sitting down when I lost my balance. Medical science is going to want a newsletter." Delphine's smile sharpened. "See? This is what I mean. She always makes everything ugly." Walter knocked 3 times again. Julian looked at him. Not around him, not through him, at him. "Mr. Bellamy," he said, "do you want to answer?" The room seemed confused by the question. Simone was not. Her throat tightened before she could stop it. Walter blinked once, hard. His fingers dragged over the tablet screen. His right hand was slower than it used to be. Some days it obeyed him, some days it made every word a hill, but tonight his anger gave it strength. The tablet spoke in its clear, artificial voice. She pulled the chair. A hush passed over the room. Not because people had not known, because now Walter had said it, and Walter was not supposed to be convenient enough to say anything. Delphine's face went white beneath the bridal makeup. "Daddy is confused." Walter hit the arm of his chair so hard Simone flinched. Julian did not. "He does not look confused to me." Helene Bellamy stood from her place beside the groom's parents. Simone's mother looked beautiful in pale blue silk, her hair swept into a soft twist, her pearl earrings glowing under the chandelier light. Helene always knew how to look wounded before anyone accused her of causing pain. "Mr. Marzano, please. My husband has had a long day. Simone knows how to upset him." "Interesting," Julian said. "She is bleeding on my floor, and you are worried that she upset him." Helene's mouth opened, then closed. Matteo Vale finally stepped forward, smooth concern settling over his face like a practiced mask. "Mr. Marzano, with respect, this is not the moment for accusations. Simone has been under strain. She has had certain financial difficulties, certain resentments. We hoped to handle this privately." Simone looked up at him. There it was. Not surprise. Preparation. Walter typed with shaking force. "No." The tablet spoke too loudly. "Good." Simone hoped it cracked the windows. Matteo's eyes flicked toward the device. Delphine moved 1 step closer, and Julian's security appeared from nowhere. 2 men in dark suits, big, silent, calm. Delphine froze. For the first time all night, she looked like a woman who had found a locked door where she expected applause. Julian turned his attention back to her. "Do you want me to tell them why your father's name is on my hotel's fraud report?" The sentence landed gently. That made it worse. Nobody spoke. Simone's pulse beat in her cut hand. Her father's eyes filled, not with fear, but with something that looked like relief. Around them, 200 guests sat trapped between the wedding cake and the truth, their champagne half raised, their mouths slightly open, their polished shoes inches from the mess they had all helped ignore. Delphine whispered, "You wouldn't." Julian's gaze did not move. "I own the building. I can be very rude in it." Simone almost smiled. The pain stopped her. And before the room could understand what had already begun, Simone remembered the first time Julian Marzano had looked at her like she was not a problem to be moved aside, but a storm he had been waiting years to watch arrive. It had been a Tuesday morning at St. Agatha Rehabilitation Center, though Simone only remembered that because Tuesday was the day the vending machine near the west elevator ate quarters and the billing office pretended not to know. Her father had speech therapy at 9, occupational therapy at 11, and a neurology review at 1. Simone had scheduled all 3 on the same day because the transport van charged by the trip, and Walter hated leaving the apartment more than once if strangers were going to talk over him in every building anyway. She was carrying 1 coffee, 2 insurance forms, 3 folders, a banana Walter refused to eat, and the giant blue binder she called The Gospel According to Receipts. The binder had saved them more than once. It had proof of payments, appointment notes, medication changes, names of rude administrators, names of kind nurses, copies of every letter, every denial, every appeal, every "please allow 10 business days" that had wasted 3 months of her father's recovery. Simone believed in paper. Paper did not care if you were tired. Paper did not pretend it had not said what it said. Paper stayed where you put it, unless your sister borrowed a document and returned it with 1 page missing. She turned the corner too quickly near the private rehab wing and almost crashed into a man in a tailored black suit. Her coffee jumped. The banana flew. Half the forms slid out of the folder like birds escaping a cage. Simone made a sound that was not a word, not a scream, and not exactly church-safe. The man caught the coffee before it hit the floor. Not the folder. Not the banana. The coffee. Simone stared at his hand around the cup, then up at his face. That was either very impressive or deeply suspicious. His eyebrows rose by the smallest amount. You were aiming for my chest. I was aiming for physical therapy room B. You were loitering in my path wearing expensive fabric. I was standing still. That makes it worse. Moving obstacles are at least participating. For 1 second, his mouth looked like it considered smiling and decided against making a public confession. He handed the coffee back. Do you usually weaponize paperwork this early in the morning? Only before noon. After that I switched to sarcasm and blood pressure medication. He looked down at the blue binder now pressed against her hip. That thing has tabs. It has sub-tabs. That sounds serious. It is. People lie less when you know the date. He studied her then, and Simone felt the full weight of his attention. Not rude, not hungry, not dismissive, just direct. She was used to being glanced over, measured, sorted, and filed under difficult, fat, loud, useful, not pretty like her sister, not soft like her mother wanted, not quiet enough to be tolerated easily. Men often looked at her body before her face. Women often looked at her clothes before her eyes. This man looked at her like she was a file he wanted to read twice. It irritated her immediately. "Can I have my banana?" she asked. He bent, picked it up, and offered it to her with solemn formality. "My apologies." That sounded fake, but the banana survived, so I'll allow it. A low sound came from one of the men standing behind him. Maybe a cough, maybe a laugh that had gotten scared. Simone noticed them for the first time, 2 large men near the wall. Not hospital security, not family, not the kind of men who visited rehab centers because they liked the cafeteria soup. One had a scar cutting through his left eyebrow. The other stood with his hands folded in front of him, eyes constantly moving. Simone looked back at the man in the suit. You either have very dramatic cousins or a job that should come with warning labels. Both, possibly. Lovely. Well, please haunt another hallway. My father has therapy, and I am already losing a fight with a banana. She stepped around him. Ms. Bellamy, he said. She stopped. Slowly, she turned. I did not give you my name. His gaze dipped to the visitor sticker on her blouse. Simone looked down. Simone Bellamy. Walter Bellamy guest, printed in bold letters across her chest. She hated herself for checking. The almost smile returned. Your badge did. Then my badge is a gossip. Julian Marzano. He offered his name as if he expected it to change the weather. It did. Not for Simone at first. She had heard the name, yes. Everyone had heard the name. But names like that floated around the city like storm warnings. They belonged on newspapers, whispered phone calls, restaurant back rooms, and conversations people stopped having when elevators opened. They did not usually attach themselves to men holding rescued coffee outside the speech therapy wing. She looked at him more carefully. Black suit, Italian shoes, quiet guards, eyes that made the hallway seem less public. "Oh," she said. Julian watched her. "Oh? That explains the shoes." This time the smile appeared. Barely, but enough. The scarred man behind him looked at the ceiling, as if asking for strength. Simone should have been afraid. A smart person would have been polite. A tired person with a father waiting in room B and a folder full of medical nonsense had limited space for terror before lunch. "Excuse me, Mr. Marzano. I have to go stop a speech therapist from asking my father if he knows what year it is, in the voice people use for puppies." Julian's expression changed. "Your father is Walter Bellamy?" "Yes. Are you also reading that off my badge?" "No." There was something in his tone that made her pause. Down the hall, Walter knocked 3 times against the armrest of his wheelchair. Simone heard it through the open therapy room door and immediately turned. That knock meant impatience, or annoyance, or someone had called him sweetie again. "Coming, Dad," she called. She pushed into room B without asking permission and found Walter facing a young therapist with kind eyes and terrible instincts. The therapist was holding up a picture card of a spoon. "Can you tell me what this is?" the therapist asked loudly. Walter stared at the card, then at Simone, then knocked 3 times on his wheelchair tray. Simone set her things down. "He knows it is a spoon. He also knows you have asked him that every week for a month. He would like to know if you are building a silverware museum." The therapist flushed. "We're assessing object identification." "Great. Assess the man, not the stroke. Dad, tell her what you want to work on." Walter tapped his tablet with stiff fingers. The device spoke. "Bank call." Simone nodded. "Yes. He wants to practice phrases for phone banking because the automated system refuses to understand him and keeps sending him to fraud prevention, which is rude, but also weirdly accurate." The therapist blinked. "Mr. Bellamy, you want to work on banking vocabulary?" Walter knocked once. "Yes." Simone leaned closer to him, fixing the edge of his blanket over his knee. "And after that, we can practice telling Delphine no, in a tone that does not make her cry theatrically." Walter's mouth pulled to one side, a smile. Small, crooked, hard-earned. From the hallway, Simone felt someone watching. She looked up. Julian Marzano stood outside the room, not entering, not interrupting, just watching Walter with an expression Simone could not read. "What?" Simone asked. Most people would have flinched at her tone. Julian did not. "You do not soften him for other people. He hates that. I noticed. Well, congratulations. Half the family still hasn't." Walter's eyes moved to Julian. His left hand rested on the tablet. He typed slowly. The device spoke. "Who?" Julian stepped just inside the doorway, but not close enough to crowd the wheelchair. "Julian Marzano." Walter looked him over. Then he knocked once. Simone glanced at the tablet screen and choked back a laugh before it spoke. "Shoes expensive." Julian looked down at his shoes, then back at Walter. "So, I have been told." Walter's eyes flicked to Simone. "Do not start," she said. He typed, "Daughter rude." Julian's mouth moved. Also noticed. "Great," Simone said. "You two can form a support group." The therapist looked between them, like she had wandered into the wrong channel on television. Julian did not stay. He gave Walter a respectful nod, glanced once at Simone's binder, then left with his silent men following behind him. Simone told herself she was glad. Men like that did not belong in her father's therapy sessions. Men like that brought problems with polished shoes and quiet threats. She had enough problems. Her problems had names like copay, denial, transfer form, Delphine, Helene, and the small suspicious feeling that something was wrong with the family account. That feeling had started as a twitch. A check had come the week before, a reimbursement check from Walter's care fund to Delphine Bellamy. The memo line said accessibility equipment. Simone had stared at it for a full minute while standing in her kitchen with the refrigerator humming behind her and her father watching an old baseball game too loudly in the living room. Accessibility equipment. Simone had paid for the shower chair herself. She had paid for the adjustable bed railing after Helene said she could not possibly keep track of all these little medical things because it gave her migraines. She had paid for the wheelchair ramp repair after Delphine said she would ask Matteo's contractor and then forgot for 6 weeks because bridal fittings were apparently a natural disaster. She had paid for the speech tablet replacement plan, the grab bars, the non-slip mats, the special utensils Walter hated but used anyway, and the portable ramp they kept in the trunk because half the city believed one step did not count as inaccessible if the restaurant had good lighting. So why had Delphine been reimbursed? At first, Simone told herself it was a mistake. Families made mistakes. Not good families, not honest families maybe, but familiar families, certainly. Delphine loved elegant confusion. She had a way of making chaos sound like weather. "Oh, I thought that was already handled. Oh, I assumed you submitted that. Oh, Mommy said Daddy agreed. Oh, Simone, you know how bad I am with paperwork." Delphine had been bad with paperwork since childhood, in the same way foxes were bad at guarding chickens. That night, Simone sat at her kitchen table after Walter went to sleep and opened the blue binder. The apartment was quiet, except for the radiator hissing and the distant siren song of the city, pretending not to be tired. She laid out receipts by date: medical, household, transport, therapy, equipment, reimbursements. Every number had a place. Every place had a story. The strange check did not belong. Then she found the charge connected to the Windermere Grand. It was hidden under a vendor label that sounded medical if you did not know better. Windermere Mobility Accommodation Services. $3,000, paid from Walter's account. Simone stared at it until the words blurred. The Windermere Grand was not a mobility company. It was a luxury hotel with marble staircases, velvet chairs, private dining rooms, and chandeliers large enough to make poor people feel personally judged. It was also Delphine's wedding venue. Simone did not sleep much after that. The next morning, while Walter ate toast cut into triangles because squares annoyed him for reasons he refused to explain, Simone called Delphine. Her sister answered on the 5th ring. "Simone, please tell me this is urgent. I'm with the florist, and he thinks cream and ivory are the same color. There's a charge from Dad's account, connected to the Windermere." A pause, then a little laugh. Soft, irritated. "Good morning to you too." "Delphine, I don't know what you're talking about. That's wild because I used nouns. Do not start. Too late. I started when I saw Dad's care money paying what looks a lot like wedding expenses." Another pause, longer this time. In the background, someone said something about orchids. Delphine's voice turned lower. It was for accessibility accommodations at the venue. Daddy needed a ramp, special seating, transportation adjustments, things like that. The venue is already wheelchair accessible. Not for our family's needs. Our family's needs. Dad needs space for his chair and a bathroom that isn't down a staircase. He does not need $3,000 in mysterious mobility romance lighting. You're being ugly. I'm being accurate. People confuse them because accuracy has less lip gloss. Delphine sighed in the tired, polished way she did when she wanted to sound older, kinder, and richer than Simone. Matteo handled some of the vendor coordination. Maybe his office labeled it oddly. Then his office can oddly refund it. Simone, this wedding matters. To whom? To everyone. To Daddy. To Mummy. To me. To the family. Simone looked into the living room, where Walter was pretending not to listen. He always pretended badly. His eyes stayed on the television, while his fingers tapped once against his blanket. No, Dad did not agree to pay for it, Simone said. Delphine's voice cooled. Daddy gave me limited authority to help manage expenses when you were overwhelmed. Or did you forget that part? Simone had not forgotten. She had argued against it for 3 days. But Helene had cried. Delphine had promised she would only help. Walter, exhausted after a long hospital stay, had knocked once to approve limited help with bills. Limited, medical and living expenses, nothing else. You can pay care bills, Simone said, not wedding bills. You are not a lawyer. No, but I can read. And yet you always read things in the worst possible way. I read numbers in the direction they go. Delphine inhaled sharply. I am not doing this with you. You have spent years acting like the only daughter who cares because you enjoy being needed. Maybe ask yourself, what happens to you if Daddy doesn't require constant rescuing anymore? Simone went still. That one found a soft place. Delphine was good at that. She could throw a knife and make it look like a flower toss. From the living room came 3 sharp knocks. Simone turned. Walter's face was dark with anger. His left hand moved across the tablet. It took time. Simone waited. Delphine kept talking through the phone, but the words became a thin noise. The tablet spoke. Hang up. Simone smiled faintly. Dad says bye. She ended the call. For a moment, neither of them moved. Walter's mouth tightened. His fingers trembled above the tablet again. Show. Simone brought him the papers, not because she wanted to upset him, because he was a grown man, and grown men were allowed to be upset about being robbed. She placed the documents on his tray one by one, explaining each charge, each label, each date. His eyes followed everything. Clear. Angry. Hurt. When she reached the Windermere charge, he closed his eyes. Did you approve this? She asked softly. His fist hit the chair 3 times. No, no, no. I know. His eyes opened, wet now. He typed slowly. No. Text code. Simone frowned. What text code? He swallowed, frustrated, and typed again with more effort. Del. Ramp. Asked code. The room seemed to tilt. Delphine asked you for an authorization code for the ramp. 1 knock. Yes. And you gave it to her because you thought it was for the wheelchair ramp. 1 knock. Simone sat back. The anger came hot, then cold, then hot again. She had known Delphine could be selfish. She had known her sister could spend money like tomorrow was something other people had to afford. But there was a difference between selfish and cruel. There was a difference between taking extra attention and taking money from a man who had to fight a tablet to say no. Walter typed again. My fault? No. Simone's voice snapped so sharply that he looked at her. She softened immediately and took his hand, careful of his weaker fingers. No, Dad, absolutely not. You trusted your daughter. That is not a crime. Being lied to is not a failure. His throat worked. He looked away. Simone squeezed his hand. I'm going to fix it. His eyes came back to hers, tired and doubtful. She lifted the blue binder. I have receipts and a bad attitude. Empires have fallen for less. That made him smile a little. But by the end of the week, the strange charges had multiplied. A caregiver reimbursement Simone had never submitted. A mobility consultation from a company that shared an address with a bridal linen vendor. A medical transport fee on a day Walter had never left the apartment. A large deposit split into smaller payments that did not trip the bank's automatic alert. Every time Simone found one, she hoped it would be the last. Every time, the paper answered no. She took the first folder to the bank. The bank manager looked at her clothes, her body, her tired face, and the binder in her arms, then used the patient voice people saved for women they planned to ignore. "Families often have informal arrangements," he said. Simone smiled so politely her cheek hurt. "Wonderful. Please show me where formal theft becomes informal." His eyes dropped to the binder. "Ms. Bellamy, if your father granted limited authority for medical and living expenses, I have the document. That may require legal review." "Great. Review legally." He folded his hands. "These situations can be sensitive. My father's money is being used to buy wedding chair covers. I am past sensitive." He promised to look into it. Simone had lived long enough to know that meant he planned to wait until she became quieter. So she filed a written dispute, asked for stamped copies, took photos of every page, and wrote his full name in the binder while he watched. People behaved differently when they saw you writing down their names. The second place she went was the Windermere Grand. Not for a confrontation, not yet. Simone believed in walking into rooms before people knew she had the right to be there. She wore her best black pants, a green blouse, and low heels because she had learned the hard way that righteous anger was less useful when your feet hurt. The hotel lobby looked like wealth had decided to become architecture. Marble floors, gold light, tall arrangements of white flowers, staff who smiled like they had been trained by expensive ghosts. At the front desk, Simone asked for the event's billing office. The young man looked at her and performed the quick visual math people did when they wanted to decide how much respect a stranger could afford. "Are you with an event?" "Yes." "Which event?" "Bellamy Vale wedding." His smile warmed by 3 degrees. "Of course. Beautiful event. Are you here for final guest adjustments?" "I'm here for billing records connected to accessibility accommodations." The smile cooled. A woman in a navy suit appeared within 2 minutes. That was interesting. Simone had expected delay. Delay was the natural perfume of bureaucracy. Fast attention meant nerves. The woman introduced herself as Meredith and led Simone to a side office with frosted glass walls and chairs too narrow to be accidental. Simone sat anyway. Fat women learned early that furniture had opinions. She had stopped apologizing to chairs in her 20s. Meredith folded her hands. "How can I assist you?" "I need documentation for charges billed to Walter Bellamy or any account using his medical trust, care fund, or authorization information." Meredith's face did not change enough, but it changed. "Are you authorized to request those records?" "I'm his primary caregiver and listed contact for care account disputes. That may not apply to wedding event billing." "Then show me what does." "I'm afraid I can't release private event records without approval from the contracting parties." "Fantastic. Who approved my father's medical money being attached to a ballroom package?" Meredith blinked. "I did not say that." "I did." The door opened before Meredith could answer. Julian Marzano stood on the other side. Simone looked at him. "You again." Meredith stood so quickly her chair rolled backward. "Mr. Marzano." Julian's eyes moved from Meredith to Simone to the folder in Simone's lap. "Ms. Bellamy, you own this place too?" "No." Meredith's face went blank. Simone raised an eyebrow. "That no has tax paperwork behind it." Julian looked almost amused. "I have interests. In hotels, in hospitals, in hallways where people are trying to carry coffee. I was visiting a man in rehab. Congratulations. I was visiting my father. Somehow only one of us looked like a villain in a cologne advertisement. Meredith looked like she wanted the floor to open and swallow her name badge. Julian stepped inside but did not sit. "What are you requesting?" "Proof that someone used my father's care money to pay for part of my sister's wedding." Meredith inhaled. Miss Bellamy, that is not... Julian lifted one hand. She stopped. Simone noticed that. She noticed everything when people with money forgot to hide power. Julian looked at the folder. Which charge? Simone hesitated. She did not trust him. She did not trust calm men with silent employees and buildings they did not technically own. But she trusted the paper more than the people around it. She opened the folder and slid a copy across the desk. Julian read the page. His expression did not change, but the room seemed to become colder. This vendor code should not exist, he said. Meredith looked down. It may be an accessibility package label from the event team. No. Julian's voice remained quiet. That code is internal. Simone leaned back. That sounded bad. It is not good. Helpful range. His eyes lifted. Do you have more? Yes. How much more? Enough to make a binder nervous. Meredith said, Mr. Marzano, perhaps legal should. Legal will wait. Julian did not look away from Simone. Did your father approve this? No. Can he confirm? He can confirm anything if people stop treating his tablet like decoration. Something moved behind Julian's eyes. Not pity. Simone hated pity. Pity was what people offered when they wanted to feel kind without becoming useful. This was sharper than pity. Anger, maybe, but held at a distance. Bring me copies, he said. Simone laughed once. Absolutely not. Meredith looked horrified. Julian tilted his head. No? No. Men like you do not get my only copies because your voice went all quiet and expensive. My voice. Yes. That thing you do when you expect people to hand you their organs for safekeeping. For a moment, silence. Then Julian said, fair. That surprised her. Annoyingly. He reached into his jacket, took out a card, and placed it on the desk. No logo, just his name and a number embossed in black. Of course. Even his business card looked like it knew secrets. Scans, then, he said. Redact anything medical not connected to the charges. You know what redact means. That is either comforting or alarming. Both, probably. Why do you care? Because someone used a protected hotel billing path to move money through my building. Your building that you do not own. My building, he said. There was no boast in it, just fact. Simone thought of the strange vendor labels. The split payments. Delphine's sudden confidence. Matteo Vale's perfect smile in engagement photos, his hand resting on Delphine's waist, like he was presenting an acquisition. This is bigger than my sister being awful, isn't it? Julian did not answer quickly. That told her enough. Meredith looked at him, then at the desk. Simone closed her folder. Wonderful. My family fraud has a basement. Julian's mouth almost softened. Do not confront your sister yet. I already did. Do not do it again. I love when dangerous strangers give me homework. This is not homework. It is caution. Caution and I are acquainted. We are not close. He stepped nearer, then stopped when her eyes sharpened. Good. He noticed boundaries. Another annoying point in his favor. Miss Bellamy, he said, if this code means what I think it means, someone is not only stealing from your father, they are using him as cover. The words settled over her skin. Cover. For what? Simone looked through the frosted glass wall at the bright hotel lobby beyond it, where a bride-to-be laughed near a display of white roses, where businessmen crossed the marble floor, where a bellhop pushed gold luggage carts, and everything looked clean, because clean was what expensive places sold best. How much trouble is my father in? She asked. Julian's voice lowered. None, if you let me trace it before the wrong people notice. My father's name is on it. I know. You understand what that means? Yes. No. I mean, you understand what that means to him. He cannot walk into a room and explain himself. He cannot charm people. He cannot perform innocence. If someone points at him, most people will look at the wheelchair, hear the tablet, and decide the story without waiting for the man. Julian was silent. Simone hated that her voice had shaken. She gathered it back. So I'm not handing this to you because your suit is scary. I need to know exactly what you plan to do with anything I send. He looked at her for a long moment. I will compare your records with hotel ledgers, vendor communications, authorization logs, and internal security. If your father's name appears where it should not, I will freeze related movement before final payments clear, quietly. If the fraud touches Matteo Vale, I will know. Her stomach tightened at the groom's name. You know Matteo? Not socially. That is the least comforting version of yes. Julian's eyes cooled. He has been trying to make friends where he does not belong. With you? With men who would like to embarrass me. And my sister is marrying him because she thinks his cheekbones are a retirement plan. That almost smile again. Gone too quickly. Simone stood, pressing the folder against her chest. I'll send scans, not originals. And if you try to bulldoze this with Mafia nonsense, I will become deeply unpleasant. Meredith looked faint. Julian only said, You have already been unpleasant. Yes, but casually. There are levels. He opened the office door for her. She did not thank him. It would have felt like surrender for no good reason. Still, as she walked past, he said quietly, Your father deserved better in that therapy room. Simone stopped with her hand on the doorframe. No one ever said that. People said Walter was lucky to have her. They said he was doing well, considering. They said recovery took patience. They said everything except the plain truth, which was that a proud man had been treated like a damaged child by people too busy to learn how he spoke. She did not look back. Yes, she said. He did. That night, she scanned documents until after midnight. Walter sat at the kitchen table across from her, wearing his old navy robe, his tablet propped beside a mug of tea he kept forgetting to drink. Every few minutes, he tapped the table once to ask for another page. Simone showed him each one. She did not hide the ugly parts. Hiding things from him would make her no better than the rest of them. At 1 a.m, Walter typed, Danger man? Simone rubbed her eyes. Julian? 1 knock. Yes. Bad? She thought about the quiet guards, the hotel office, the way Meredith had gone stiff at his name. Then she thought about how he had looked at Walter, how he had asked him directly, how he had stopped outside the therapy room instead of entering like he owned the air. I don't know, Simone said. Probably, but maybe not in the direction we need to worry about. Walter considered this. Then he typed, Shoes bad. Simone smiled despite herself. The shoes are criminal. His mouth lifted. Then it fell again. Del? Simone's smile disappeared. I don't know how bad it is yet. Walter knocked twice. No, not enough. He typed slowly. Tell truth. Simone looked at her father across the cheap kitchen table, at the man who had taught her to check oil, cook rice without burning the pot, tip waitresses in cash, and never sign anything she had not read. He had made mistakes. He had raised one daughter who believed love meant doing the work, and another who believed love meant being excused from it. He had gone quiet after the stroke, but silence had not made him simple. It had made other people lazy. I think Delphine stole from you, Simone said. Walter closed his eyes. She reached for his hand, and I think Matteo helped. His fingers closed around hers as well as they could. For a while, the only sound was the scanner moving light across paper. Then Walter typed again. Wedding? Simone let out a long breath. I don't know. He knocked once. She frowned. You still want to go? 1 knock. Dad. He typed. He typed. My daughter. The words sat between them. Simone knew which daughter he meant. Both of them. That was the terrible thing about parents. Sometimes love remained even when it had no good excuse. Walter was furious, hurt, betrayed. But Delphine was still the baby he had once carried on his shoulders through summer festivals, the little girl who used to fall asleep with one fist wrapped in his shirt, the woman now possibly stealing his money to pay for roses and string lights and whatever else rich people needed to promise forever in public. Simone wanted to protect him from that pain. She also knew protection could become a quieter kind of control if you dressed it too nicely. "Okay," she said softly. "We keep looking. We get proof. Then you decide what you want." Walter knocked once. Yes. By morning, Julian had replied to the scans with only one sentence. "Do not delete anything, and do not be alone with either of them." Simone stared at the message while standing beside the stove, eggs burning in the pan. Walter's tablet spoke from the table. "Eggs. Language," Simone muttered, scraping the pan. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Delphine. "Mom says you're upsetting Daddy about wedding expenses. Stop digging through things you don't understand. You're going to ruin everything." Simone looked at the blackened eggs, then at Walter, then at the blue binder sitting open beside his tea. She typed back, "Funny. That's what the receipts said about you." 3 dots appeared, vanished, appeared again. Then nothing. Simone set the phone down. Walter watched her. "What?" she asked. He typed, "Trouble." She kissed the top of his head. "I know." He knocked 3 times, softer now. She understood without the tablet. "Not alone." "I'm not," she said. But even as she said it, Simone was not sure that was true. Aunt Josephine believed her. Walter believed her. Julian Marzano might be useful, but useful was not the same thing as safe. Her mother would choose peace over truth, if peace came with nice photographs. Delphine would cry. Matteo would smile. The bank would delay. The hotel would protect itself. The family would call her bitter. They would say she was jealous. They would say Simone had always hated seeing Delphine happy. They would say Walter was confused. They would say whatever they had to say to keep the pretty room pretty. By noon, Julian had sent a black car to the curb outside her building. Simone saw it from the window and immediately called him. He answered on the second ring. "Miss Bellamy. There is a funeral-looking sedan outside my apartment. It is for you. I gathered that when the driver looked directly at my window like a polite kidnapper. You have an appointment with Bianca Fontaine." "I do?" "Yes." "Fascinating. I must have missed the part where I became a package you could root." A pause. "She is an elder law attorney." Simone stopped. Walter looked up from his crossword puzzle. He could still solve half the clues faster than she could, though he acted smug about it in a very disabled-friendly way, meaning silently and with devastating eyebrows. Julian continued. "She can review the power of attorney, the charges, and your father's options. No cost to you." "Paid by whom?" "Me." "No." "Fine. Paid by the Windermere's internal fraud budget." "That sounds fake." "It exists now." Simone closed her eyes. "I do not accept charity from men who probably have enemies in the river." "I do not put enemies in the river." "Oh, good. The river gets weekends off." "Miss Bellamy." "Mr. Marzano." "Your sister still has limited authority. The final event payment is scheduled to clear before the wedding. If that happens, recovering funds becomes harder. If Matteo Vale is using the account to move money under medical labels, time matters." Simone hated that he was right. She hated even more that he had arranged the one thing she had not known how to afford. What does Bianca know? Only that there may be financial misuse involving a stroke survivor with limited speech and a daughter who keeps excellent records. Simone glanced at the binder. Walter knocked once. "Yes." She covered the phone. "You don't even know what he said." Walter typed, Go. Simone sighed. Fine. But if the driver calls me ma'am, in a tragic voice, I'm walking. Julian's voice warmed almost enough to be human. I will warn him. Bianca Fontaine's office was nothing like Simone expected. No marble, no wall of leather books designed to scare poor people. No giant desk separating human need from hourly rates. It sat above a bakery in a brick building with a slow elevator and smelled faintly like cinnamon. Bianca herself was a tall black woman in a cream suit, with silver locks pinned at the back of her head and reading glasses on a gold chain. She greeted Walter first. "Mr. Bellamy," she said, bending slightly, not too much. "I'm Bianca Fontaine. I understand you use a tablet and knock responses. 1 knock yes, 2 no, 3 urgent or objection." Walter blinked, then knocked once. Bianca smiled. "Good. I'll ask you directly when something concerns your wishes. Your daughter can clarify, but she will not answer for you unless you ask her to." Walter's eyes filled so fast Simone had to look away. Bianca noticed. She was kind enough not to mention it. For the next 2 hours, they reviewed everything. The limited power of attorney, the reimbursement checks, the Windermere codes, the authorization text Walter had received from Delphine. Bianca did not gasp. She did not perform outrage. She made notes with calm precision, which Simone appreciated more than sympathy. At last, Bianca set down her pen. "This is financial exploitation." Simone's hand tightened around the edge of her chair. Walter stared at the desk. Bianca continued, gentle but firm. The authority given to Delphine was limited. Medical care, living expenses, necessary support. These charges do not appear to fit that authority. If she misrepresented the reason for an authorization code, that is serious. If funds were intentionally disguised, more serious. If another party helped conceal the payments, that may involve additional criminal exposure. Walter typed. "Stop her." Bianca turned to him. "Yes. We can revoke the authority today if that is what you want. 1 knock. Hard. We can also notify the bank, request a freeze on disputed payment channels, and preserve records. You may decide later whether to pursue civil or criminal action." Walter typed again, slow and fierce. "My money, my voice." Bianca nodded. "Exactly." Simone looked down at her lap, because if she looked at her father, she was going to cry, and if she started crying now, she might not stop before the wedding. Her phone buzzed. "Julian. The final Windermere transfer just failed." Another message followed. "Your sister knows." Simone's stomach dropped. Then Delphine called. Simone let it ring once, twice. Bianca looked at the screen. "You don't have to answer." Walter knocked 3 times. Simone answered. Delphine did not say hello. "What did you do?" Simone's voice came out calm. Too calm, maybe. "I had a lovely meeting with an attorney. She has excellent pens. You froze the payment." "I personally do not have that kind of glamour." "Do you have any idea what you've done? The wedding is in 3 days. Then you have 3 days to explain why Dad's care money was paying for it." A small, wounded silence came through the line. Simone could almost see Delphine pressing one hand to her chest, eyes shining, chin trembling, the beautiful victim arranging herself in invisible mirrors. "I cannot believe you hate me this much," Delphine whispered. Simone closed her eyes. There it was, the old trap. The one Delphine had been setting since they were children. If Simone objected, she hated her. If Simone asked questions, she was jealous. If Simone needed help, she was dramatic. If Delphine took too much, it was because Simone made being loved so difficult. "I don't hate you," Simone said. "I hate the math. You are going to embarrass Daddy." Walter slammed his fist against the chair so hard, Bianca's pen jumped. Simone opened her eyes. "No, Delphine. You already did that. I just brought receipts." Delphine's voice sharpened. Mom is right. You have always needed Daddy to be helpless so you could feel important. Simone went cold. Across the desk, Walter's face twisted. He had heard it. Of course he had heard it. The room was quiet, and cruelty liked an audience. Bianca reached toward the phone, not touching it, only offering. Simone shook her head. "Say that again," Simone said. Delphine inhaled. "Say it," Simone repeated, softer, with him listening. Nothing. Then a man's voice entered the call. Smooth, controlled. "Simone," Matteo Vale said, "this has gone too far." Her skin prickled. "Hello, groom. I understand you're upset, but you're making allegations you cannot prove." Simone looked at the binder. "I can prove Tuesday. That binder of yours does not make you a lawyer." "No, but it makes lawyers smile." Bianca's mouth twitched. Matteo's voice lowered. "Listen carefully. Your father gave Delphine authorization. You have been managing his accounts for years. If this becomes public, people will ask why you did not notice sooner. They will ask who had the most access. They will ask whether a stressed, underpaid caregiver might have moved money and blamed her prettier sister when the records got messy." The room went still. Simone felt the words slide into place like a trapdoor, not because they were true, because they were possible, to strangers, to banks, to police, to family members who wanted the easiest story. She was the one with access. She was the one who paid bills. She was the one who kept records. She was the one who could be painted as resentful, tired, desperate. Matteo knew that. He had planned for it. Walter typed so hard his finger slipped twice. Liar. The tablet spoke into the phone. Matteo paused. Then, softly, "Walter, you're confused." Walter made a sound, not a word, a broken, furious sound that tore through Simone worse than any insult could have. Simone stood. "Do not speak to him like that." Matteo sighed. "I'm trying to protect everyone." "No," Simone said. "You're trying to sound reasonable while standing over a hole you dug." Delphine came back on the line, crying now. "Please, Simone, please. Just say the payment was an early inheritance. Say Daddy wanted to help. We can fix the paperwork after the honeymoon. You don't understand what this will do." "I understand exactly what it will do. You will ruin my wedding." Simone looked at Walter, at his wet eyes, at his hand resting on the tablet that had become the only voice some people allowed him. "No," she said. "You ruined his trust." She ended the call. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then Walter typed, "Do not go wedding." Simone's breath shook with relief, because part of her had been afraid he would still want to attend, still want to sit in that room and watch the daughter who stole from him pretend to be blessed. "You don't want to go." 2 knocks. "No." Then he typed again. "Unless." Simone frowned. "Unless what?" His fingers moved slowly, painfully, determined. "Need truth heard." Bianca leaned back, watching him with careful respect. Walter continued. "Family table." Simone's throat tightened. "Dad, sit with me." The tablet voice made it plain, too plain to hide from. "Please come sit with me." Simone looked at those words until they blurred. The wedding was a trap. She knew that. Julian knew it. Bianca probably knew it too. Delphine would perform innocence. Helene would pressure silence. Matteo would have some elegant little knife ready, maybe legal, maybe social, maybe worse. The room would be full of people who wanted the pretty version. Simone had spent her whole life seated near the kitchen doors of her own family, useful enough to call, embarrassing enough to hide. But Walter wanted the truth heard, and for the first time since his stroke, he was not asking Simone to protect him from the room. He was asking her to help him enter it. Simone wiped her eyes with the back of her wrist, and gave him the answer he had taught her to give when something was frightening but necessary. "All right," she said, "then we bring the binder." The blue binder looked ridiculous on the kitchen table beside Walter's toast, but Simone knew better than to judge a weapon by its color. Some people carried guns, some people carried family names. Delphine carried tears that appeared exactly when an audience arrived. Matteo Vale carried a smile sharp enough to open locks. Simone carried receipts in plastic sleeves, color-coded tabs, and a pen that had once survived the washing machine and therefore deserved loyalty. By the next morning, the binder had grown fatter, not because Simone had found more courage, but because fear had made her careful. Fear could do that if you did not let it own the room. It could sharpen the edges of ordinary things until a bank statement became a blade and a copy of a text message became a door someone could no longer close. Walter sat across from her in his robe, watching as she slid each document into place. His tea had gone cold. His toast had gone untouched except for one corner he had bitten off and then rejected with the offended dignity of a food critic. Simone did not bother reminding him to eat. She had learned that not every act of care needed to happen out loud. Sometimes you put fresh tea in front of a man and let him pretend he had asked for it. Sometimes you cut his pills and do not make a ceremony out of the swallowing. Sometimes you sit with him while he stares at the evidence of betrayal, and you do not rush him into forgiveness, because forgiveness was another thing people tried to steal when they were tired of consequences. Walter typed slowly on his tablet. His hand was stiff that morning, the fingers dragging more than tapping. Simone watched without helping. It hurt to watch. It would have hurt him more if she reached over too soon. Finally, the tablet spoke. "Need suit." Simone blinked. "For the wedding?" One knock. "Dad, we talked about this. You do not have to look like a magazine uncle while we walk into a family disaster." His eyes narrowed. She sighed. "Fine. Handsome family disaster." One knock. "Yes, yes. You were very handsome before the stroke. You remain aggressively handsome now. Please stop flirting with the concept of tailoring." His mouth pulled to the side. Not quite a smile. Enough. The tablet spoke again. "Blue tie." Simone looked at him for a long moment. The blue tie had been his favorite before everything changed. Deep navy silk with tiny silver dots. He had worn it to Delphine's college graduation, to Simone's hospital promotion ceremony, to the anniversary dinner Helene left early because the restaurant lighting made her tired. After the stroke, the tie had stayed folded in the back of his closet because Walter said ties made him feel trapped near the throat. Simone had not argued. She had put it away and pretended not to know how often he looked at that drawer. "You want the blue tie," she said softly. One knock. She swallowed. "Okay." He typed. Not hiding. Simone had to look down at the binder. There were moments when her father's tablet voice made things too plain. It did not soften. It did not tremble the way a human voice did when pride was trying to protect pain. The machine simply said the truth and left it sitting there. "No," she said, "we are not hiding." The first call came from Helene before noon. Simone let it go to voicemail because her mother's voice could turn one sentence into a fog bank, and Simone needed clean air. Helene called again, then Delphine. Then Helene again, then a number Simone did not recognize, which she assumed was either Matteo or a florist who had been told she was unstable and dangerous with centerpieces. By the seventh missed call, Walter knocked once and pointed at the phone. "No," Simone said. "We are not opening the theater before the actors are costumed." Walter gave her the eyebrow. "I know that sounded dramatic. I live in this family. I have earned it." Her phone buzzed again. This time the screen said Julian Marzano. She answered. "If you are calling to ask whether I have been alone with either of them, I will have you know I have not even been alone with my thoughts." Good. That was not an invitation to sound pleased. "I will try to grieve privately." Simone pressed the phone between her shoulder and ear while labeling a new folder. "What do you have?" A pause came through the line, small but noticeable. Julian did not seem like a man who paused unless the next words mattered. The Windermere charge is not isolated. Simone's hand stopped above the label. "I know. You suspected. Now I know." Walter looked up. Simone put the phone on speaker. "Dad is here." Julian's voice changed. Not softer exactly, but more respectful, more direct. "Mr. Bellamy." Walter knocked once. "I reviewed the hotel ledgers. Your name appears in 5 transactions tied to accessibility adjustments for the Bellamy Vale event. Only one of those adjustments exists. The rest were routed through shell vendor labels attached to luxury services." Simone shut her eyes briefly. "Say that in regular angry people English. Your money helped pay for upgraded flowers, private security, imported linens, part of the dessert service, and a late fee connected to the ballroom extension." The apartment went quiet. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a bus hissed at the curb. Somewhere upstairs, a child dropped something heavy and immediately lied about it. Walter stared at the phone, face still. Then his fist hit the table 3 times. Simone's own anger rose so fast she had to breathe through it. Flowers, linens, dessert, a late fee, not medicine, not a ramp, not speech therapy, not transport, not anything that helped him live more easily in the body he had been forced to relearn. Flowers. "Do you have proof?" she asked. "Yes." "Copies?" "I am sending them to Bianca and to you. I froze the final transfer, but there is more. Matteo Vale's name appears in communications with a vendor my people have seen before. That sounds ominous in the way your conversations usually do. It should." Walter typed. "Criminal?" Julian answered, before Simone could read it aloud. "Yes, possibly. Not only the family fraud. Matteo may have used the wedding to move money for men who are not patient when embarrassed." Simone sat back slowly. "And he put my father's name in the middle of it." "Yes. Why?" "Because elderly disabled people with family-managed accounts are easy to use if no one is watching closely." Simone's throat tightened. It was cruel because it was practical. That was always the ugliest kind of cruelty. Not rage, not passion, just someone looking at Walter's chair, his tablet, his slow hand, and deciding he made a good hiding place. Walter typed again. "Wedding trap?" Julian was silent for half a second. "Yes." Simone turned to her father. "See?" Walter knocked 3 times and gave her a look that needed no translation. She sighed. "Yes, I know you still want to go." Julian's voice sharpened. "He wants to attend?" Walter knocked once. Simone said, "He wants the truth heard. That room will not be safe." "Define safe," Simone said. "Because we have spent 6 weeks being robbed by family, threatened by cheekbones in a tux, and ignored by the banking system." Safe left the group chat. Walter glanced at her. "What? You like that phrase?" The tablet spoke. "No. Liar." Julian exhaled. It might have been a laugh, but Simone could not prove it in court. "I can put security in the room," he said, quietly. Simone's eyes narrowed. "I do not want men hovering around my father like he is evidence. They will not hover, and I do not want you turning the wedding into some Mafia opera." "Ms. Bellamy, if I wanted opera, there would already be violins. Somehow that did not make me feel better." "Good. You should not feel better. You should feel prepared." The word settled into her. Prepared was better than brave. Brave sounded like something people praised after they had abandoned you. Prepared had copies. Bianca arrived at the apartment later that afternoon with a leather briefcase, a stack of legal papers, and the calm expression of a woman who had ruined many liars without raising her voice. Aunt Josephine arrived 12 minutes after that with groceries nobody had asked for, 2 folding chairs from her church basement, and the announcement that she had brought a pie because people behaved better around pie, or at least had something to choke on if they did not. Walter seemed relieved to see her. Simone was too, though she only said, "You know this is not a picnic." Aunt Josephine placed the pie on the counter. "Baby, every family war needs snacks." Bianca reviewed the revocation one more time, pointing where Walter needed to sign. "This ends Delphine's authority immediately. I have already sent notice to the bank by secure delivery, but the signed original matters. After this, she has no lawful right to manage, request, approve, or move funds from your account." Walter stared at the paper. His jaw worked. Simone lowered herself into the chair beside him. "You do not have to feel clean about it." His eyes moved to hers. "I mean it," she said. "You can love her and stop her. Both can exist in the same room, even if it makes the room awful." His eyes filled again, but he did not cry. Walter rarely cried. The stroke had changed many things about him, but not that stubborn wall. He picked up the pen. His grip was awkward. Bianca steadied the paper, not his hand. Simone saw that and decided she liked her even more. Walter signed slowly. The W broke in the middle. The B leaned too far right. It was not the signature he used to have, the smooth, quick mark he had made on school forms and birthday cards and checks for pizza nights when Simone and Delphine were girls. This signature fought its way onto the page. When he finished, he sat back, sweating slightly. Bianca nodded. "Done." Aunt Josephine whispered, "Amen." Simone took the paper and felt something shift under her ribs. Not relief. Not yet. But the first stone had moved. The wall was not down, but it had noticed them. That evening, Helene came to the apartment. She did not knock with anger. Helene never knocked with anger. She knocked softly, sadly, making the door feel guilty before it opened. Simone looked through the peephole and groaned. Walter glanced over. "It's Mum." His face tightened. Then he knocked once. Simone opened the door, leaving the chain on. Helene stood in the hallway wearing a camel coat and the wounded expression of a saint in comfortable shoes. She looked at the chain as if it had personally betrayed her. "Simone," she said. "Mother, must you do that? Use the door chain? In this economy, yes." Helene closed her eyes. "I came to see your father." "He is resting." Behind Simone, Walter knocked once, loud. Simone muttered, "Traitor," and unlatched the chain. Helene stepped inside, glancing around the apartment as though its smallness reflected badly on her. Simone wondered if her mother knew how many of Walter's checks had once helped cover Delphine's emergencies while Simone learned how to stretch soup. Probably. Helene had always been gifted at knowing things she did not want to discuss. Walter sat in his chair near the window with the tablet on his tray. His blue binder, now promoted from Simone's binder to their binder, rested on the side table like a quiet animal. Helene approached him, face trembling. "Walter." He watched her. She knelt beside him and took his hand before he could decide if he wanted that. Simone almost spoke, but Walter met her eyes and gave the smallest shake of his head. Helene began to cry. "I don't know what has gotten into this family." Simone leaned against the kitchen counter. "Receipts." Helene flinched. "Please do not start." "That has been the family slogan for 30 years. Her mother turned. "You think you are the only one hurting. Your sister is falling apart. The wedding is paid for. People are flying in. Matteo's family is involved. Do you understand the shame this could bring?" Walter knocked 3 times. Helene looked back at him. "I know, honey. I know you're upset." He typed. "Stolen." The tablet voice filled the apartment. Helene's face trembled harder. "It is not that simple." Simone laughed once. It came out cold. Money went from Dad's care fund to Delphine's wedding vendors. It is not soup, Mom. It does not need simmering. Delphine made mistakes. Multiple payments over 18 months is not a mistake. That is a subscription. Helene stood. You have always been so hard on her. And everyone has always been so soft that she left fingerprints in the frosting. That is ugly. It should be. It is theft. She is your sister. He is your husband. That silenced the room. Helene's eyes flashed. For a second, the wounded softness vanished, and Simone saw the anger beneath it. Not anger at Delphine, not anger at Matteo. Anger at Simone for making peace expensive. You don't understand what it was like after his stroke, Helene whispered. You took over everything so quickly. Everyone praised you. Simone knows the doctors. Simone knows the forms. Simone can handle it. And I disappeared in my own marriage. Simone stared at her mother. Walter's face changed. For one dangerous moment, Simone wanted to be cruel. She wanted to say that Helene had disappeared because hospitals smelled like fear and she preferred places with valet parking. She wanted to say that Simone had taken over because somebody had to learn medication names while Helene was telling friends that the stress made her skin dull. She wanted to say that being useful was not the same thing as being loved. Instead, she said, you were allowed to be overwhelmed. You were not allowed to let someone steal from him because facing it made you uncomfortable. Helene turned away. Walter typed with effort. Stay. Talk. Helene looked at the tablet, then at his face. Something like shame moved across her features. Her real shame, maybe. Simone did not trust it yet, but she saw it. I don't know how, Helene whispered. Walter typed. Try. The word broke something in the apartment. Helene sat down. Not gracefully, not dramatically. Just down, as if her knees had gotten tired of holding up excuses. Simone stayed by the counter and said nothing while Walter began typing again. It took a long time. The room made space for him, which was rare and strange and almost holy in its own messy way. Not child. Helene covered her mouth. He continued. Ask me. Tears slipped down Helene's face. I'm sorry. Walter watched her, then knocked twice. No. She blinked. He typed. Ask. Helene swallowed hard. Did Delphine take your money? 1 knock. Did you say yes to the wedding charges? 2 knocks. Did you want me to stop ignoring it? 1 knock. Helene bowed her head. For a moment, Simone felt 15 years old again, watching her mother choose between the easy daughter and the difficult truth. Only now Walter was in the room, and the truth had a tablet. When Helene left an hour later, she looked smaller. She did not promise to confront Delphine. She did not suddenly become the mother Simone had needed. Life rarely repaired itself that neatly before dinner, but she kissed Walter's forehead after asking permission with her eyes, and when she reached the door, she said quietly, I will not call him confused again. Simone nodded once. It was not forgiveness. It was a receipt for a possible beginning. The next 2 days became a strange little storm of preparation. Bianca filed documents, sent notices, preserved records, and explained every step to Walter like he was the client, because he was. Julian's people traced hotel emails and vendor ledgers. Simone scanned, copied, sorted, labeled, and made a wedding folder so heavy Aunt Josephine said it needed its own chair. Delphine sent messages that swung from crying to threats to soft childhood memories to photos of the wedding programs, as if paper with gold script could erase stolen money. Matteo sent nothing, which Simone found worse. Quiet men with perfect hair were never quiet because they had run out of ideas. Julian called every evening, always after Walter's dinner, always with updates. At first, Simone answered with suspicion ready in her hand. By the third call, she had started expecting the sound of his voice, in a way that irritated her deeply. "Your sister tried to push the final payment through under a new account," he said, the night before the wedding.
Simone sat on the living room floor, surrounded by copies.
Walter watched a detective show too loudly, either because he enjoyed it or because he wanted to pretend he was not listening. Of course she did. Delphine once returned a dress after wearing it to Easter and told the store it had emotional defects. Did it? It had armpit shimmer and ham glaze on the cuff. She sounds determined. She is. It would be inspiring if it were attached to literally any moral direction. Julian was quiet a moment. Matteo met with 2 men this afternoon at the hotel. Dangerous men? Yes. Your kind of dangerous, or normal tax fraud dangerous? My kind. Simone lowered the papers. That is bad. Yes. What did they want? To make sure the wedding still moves forward. Because of the money? Because of what the money represents. Matteo has promised them access, influence, and a path through my property. If he fails publicly, he becomes useless. Useless men become nervous. Nervous men make mistakes. Are you giving me a bedtime story or a threat assessment? Both, perhaps. I hate that perhaps. So do I. She leaned her head back against the sofa. My father still wants to go. I know. You're not going to try to stop him? No. That surprised her enough that she sat up. No. He has been stopped enough. The words entered quietly. They stayed. Simone looked across the room at Walter, who was pretending not to react while very clearly reacting. His eyes remained on the television, but his hand had stilled on the blanket. Julian continued, I will make the room as controlled as possible. Security will be placed as hotel staff. Bianca will attend as your guest. Josephine already threatened my event manager with a purse and demanded a chair beside your father. Simone closed her eyes. That sounds like Aunt Josephine. She asked whether my men were spiritually prepared. They are not, I gathered. Simone smiled despite herself. Julian's voice changed slightly. Miss Bellamy. That tone has bad shoes. Simone. Her name sounded different in his mouth. Not sweet, not soft, but direct, as if he had decided it deserved the whole room. She did not answer for a second. He said, Do not let them pull you away from your father tomorrow. Not your sister, not your mother, not Matteo. If anyone says there is a private conversation, a family moment, a quick signature, a correction, a misunderstanding, you say no. Bossy. Yes. I'm aware of the trap. I believe you. I am reminding the part of you that still loves them. That made her throat close. The worst part was that he was right. Some corner of Simone still loved Delphine, not the woman stealing under satin, the girl who used to climb into Simone's bed during thunderstorms and demand stories about princesses who ran away from boring kingdoms. The teenager who cried when their first dog died. The little sister who once thought Simone was the smartest person alive because she could make pancakes shaped like hearts. Love was terrible that way. It kept old evidence in the drawer long after new evidence had convicted someone. I know, Simone said quietly. I will be in the building, lurking dramatically, working. Those are cousins. Another faint breath, almost a laugh. Good night, Simone. She ended the call and found Walter watching her. What? She asked. He typed. Shoes man likes you. Simone stared. You have lost tablet privileges. Walter's mouth curved. I mean it. Elder abuse works both ways. The wedding day arrived bright, cold, and indecently beautiful. The sky was a pale, polished blue, the kind of sky people took as a blessing if they wanted the day to bless them. Simone woke before her alarm and lay still for a moment, listening to the pipes, the city, her father, moving faintly in the next room. She did not feel brave. She felt large and tired and full of paper cuts. Maybe that was close enough. She helped Walter shave because his left hand was too unreliable that morning, and he cursed the razor with 3 knocks each time she paused. She helped him into his white shirt, then the charcoal suit that had needed alterations after the stroke changed the slope of his shoulders. The blue tie came last. Her fingers shook when she knotted it. Walter watched her face in the mirror. "You look good," she said. 1 knock. "Not humble, but accurate," he typed. "You?" "I am wearing the green dress." His eyebrows rose. Yes, the green dress. The green dress was not new, but it knew her. Deep emerald, soft at the waist, with sleeves that fell loose over her arms, and a neckline that made Helene say, "Are you sure?" which had always been a good sign. Simone had almost chosen black, because black was practical and forgiving and easy to disappear in. Then she heard Walter's tablet in her memory, not hiding, so she wore green. Aunt Josephine arrived in purple, with a hat that looked ready to testify. Bianca arrived in navy, with a legal folder slim enough to look harmless, and dangerous enough not to be. The car Julian sent was black, of course, because apparently the man had made a lifetime commitment to a color palette. Simone almost made a joke about it, but when the driver opened the door and greeted Walter by name, not as Sir, not as Chair, not as the older gentleman, but as Mr. Bellamy, her joke lost its footing. The Windermere Grand rose above the avenue like a rich person's apology, all pale stone, mirrored windows, and gold trim catching the afternoon light. Guests moved through the entrance in silk, velvet, and perfume. Laughter floated on the cold air. Photographers gathered near the doors, aiming cameras at anyone shiny enough to matter. Simone stood on the sidewalk for 1 second, with the binder tucked in a black leather tote and her father's wheelchair beneath her hands. Walter reached back and touched her wrist. She looked down. He knocked once. Yes. So they went inside. The lobby smelled of white flowers, candle wax, and money. A string quartet played somewhere beyond the ballroom doors. Staff moved with controlled smiles. Simone saw them differently now. Which ones were real servers? Which ones were Julian's security? Which ones were watching Matteo's people? She caught a glimpse of Julian near the far archway, speaking to a hotel manager. Black suit, no flower, no smile. He looked up as if he had felt her arrive. For 1 second, the room thinned around them. His gaze moved over Walter first. The blue tie, the chair, the tablet. Then Aunt Josephine, Bianca, and finally Simone. He did not smile, but something in his face shifted, and she hated how steadied she felt by it. He came over. "Mr. Bellamy." Walter knocked once. "Ms. Bellamy." "Mr. Marzano. I see the funeral sedan gave birth to matching suits." Julian's eyes moved to the men stationed near the ballroom. Large family. Do they all brood? "Only the friendly ones." Aunt Josephine looked him up and down. "You the hotel man?" Julian inclined his head. "Among other things." "Mm-hmm. I brought my own chair for Walter, in case your people tried something cute." Simone turned. "You brought a chair." Aunt Josephine patted her purse. "Foldable." Julian did not blink. "We have placed Mr. Bellamy at the family table." Simone went still. "That was not the arrangement," she said. "No," Julian said. "It is the corrected one." From behind him, Delphine's wedding planner hurried toward them, pale and headset strangled. "Mr. Marzano, the bride requested Mr. Bellamy remain at the front family table, but Ms. Bellamy's assigned table is near the service entrance due to spacing limitations." Aunt Josephine made a sound that had ended arguments in 3 states. Simone smiled at the planner. "Spacing limitations. That is elegant." The planner looked helpless. "I'm very sorry." Walter knocked 3 times. Julian looked at the planner. "Add a chair beside Mr. Bellamy." The bride was very specific. So am I. The planner swallowed. Of course. Simone stared at Julian. You cannot rearrange my sister's seating chart just because you own nothing and control everything. I control chairs. That must be satisfying. More than you know. They entered the ballroom. It was beautiful. Simone hated that. She wanted it to look rotten, because it was rotten, but Delphine had always understood beauty. White roses climbed the columns. Glass candles shimmered along long tables. Gold plates caught the light. The cake stood near the balcony doors. 5 tiers of sugar and theft. The band played softly from a raised platform. Every detail whispered taste, romance, forever. Every detail had a price. Guests turned as Walter rolled in. Some smiled with surprise, others with pity. A few looked at Simone and then away, as if she had arrived carrying a storm cloud and a casserole. Helene stood near the family table, her face tightening when she saw Simone's dress, Walter's tie, Bianca's folder, Aunt Josephine's purse, and Julian walking close behind them, like a shadow with excellent tailoring. Simone, Helene said quietly, you came. Dad asked me to sit with him. Helene looked at Walter. He held her gaze. Then she nodded, not happily, but she moved her purse from the chair beside him. It should have been a small thing. A purse lifted, a chair opened, but Simone felt it in her chest. For once, nobody had to drag space out of the family by force. Then Delphine saw them. The bride stood near the entrance in all her impossible beauty. Her white gown fitted perfectly. Her hair swept into soft waves under a veil edged with pearls. She looked like the kind of woman strangers helped without being asked. Her eyes landed on Simone beside Walter, and the softness drained from her face so quickly it was like watching a candle go out. She came toward them smiling. The smile was for the room. "Daddy," she said, bending toward Walter, "you look so handsome." Walter watched her. No knock. Delphine's smile trembled. "I'm so glad you came." Simone felt her father's hand shift in his lap. Delphine turned to her. Simone, green, bold, white, traditional. Aunt Josephine coughed into her napkin. Delphine leaned closer, voice low. "You were seated elsewhere. Dad wanted me here. This is my wedding. It is also his money." The words were quiet, too quiet for the room, but not for Delphine. Her eyes flashed. "Do not do this today." Then you picked an awkward day to commit fraud. Delphine's face went pale beneath the makeup. She glanced toward Julian, who stood several feet away speaking with Bianca as if he could not hear them. Simone knew he could. Men like Julian heard knives leaving drawers. Matteo appeared behind Delphine and placed a hand at the small of her back. "Everything all right?" There it was again. Smooth concern, clean voice, no surprise. Simone looked at him. "Lovely day for accounting." His smile did not move. "You must be exhausted." "People keep saying that like it creates evidence." He lowered his voice. "You have one chance to leave this alone." Walter's hand moved toward the tablet. Matteo's gaze flicked down. "Walter, we don't need to upset you." Walter knocked 3 times so hard that several heads turned. Julian stepped closer, and Matteo's smile tightened. The ceremony had already happened earlier in a private chapel, so the reception began with introductions, applause, music, and the kind of joy people performed best when they did not know where the money came from. Simone sat beside Walter through the speeches. Her hand rested near the tote with the binder. Bianca sat on the other side of Aunt Josephine, calm as a loaded drawer. Helene smiled when people looked at her and stared into her wine when they did not. Delphine avoided Walter's eyes. Matteo did not. He watched Simone often, not openly. Men like him never wasted a stare, but she felt it each time. A small pressure, a reminder that he had a plan she had not found yet. During the salad course, Helene leaned toward Simone. Please do not make a scene. Simone kept her eyes on the front of the room, where Delphine laughed with Matteo's parents. You keep asking the wrong daughter. I spoke with her. And? Helene's mouth tightened. She says Matteo handled more than she realized. Convenient. She is scared. Good. Simone. She should be scared. Dad was scared. He was scared every time a bank envelope arrived, and he could not call them himself. He was scared every time someone asked a question too fast, and then looked at me instead of waiting. He was scared when he realized his own daughter had used his trust against him. So yes, I hope Delphine is scared. Maybe fear will introduce her to reality. Helene's eyes filled again, but Simone did not soften. Not this time. The first public crack came during the groom's toast. Matteo stood beneath the chandelier, holding a glass of champagne, beautiful enough to make suspicion seem impolite. He spoke about love, family, second chances, and the generosity of those who came before us. Simone almost admired the nerve. Walter stared at him without blinking. Then Matteo lifted his glass toward Walter. I especially want to honor my new father-in-law, he said, voice warm. Walter Bellamy has shown all of us what dignity looks like through hardship. His support for this wedding has meant more than I can say. Walter went very still. Simone's hand closed around the edge of the table. Delphine stared at Matteo, panic flashing across her face. That interested Simone. Delphine had expected lies, but not that one, not out loud. Matteo continued, family is not only about what we receive, it is about what we give, even when giving requires sacrifice. Walter reached for the tablet. Delphine moved first. She stepped behind his chair, touching his shoulder as if comforting him, but her fingers shifted toward the tablet mount. Simone caught her wrist. No. Delphine whispered, let go. You first. Heads turned. No. Matteo paused at the microphone. His expression remained gentle, but his eyes hardened. Walter typed with one hand, slower under the room's attention. Simone let go of Delphine only when Julian appeared behind her. Delphine stepped back. The tablet spoke. I did not give. The room became restless, confused. Matteo lowered his glass. Walter, of course you did. You approved accommodations, support, help for the family. Walter knocked 3 times. The sound cracked through the ballroom. Bianca stood. Mr. Bellamy revoked Delphine Vale's limited power of attorney this week after discovering unauthorized charges. Gasps. Real ones this time. Delphine's hand flew to her mouth. How could you? Simone looked up at her. Again, wrong person. Matteo set down his glass. This is wildly inappropriate. Julian stepped into the open space between the tables. So was using medical billing labels to hide wedding expenses. Now the room truly changed. Beautiful rooms could ignore family tension. They could not ignore fraud. Guests whispered. Matteo's parents looked stunned. Delphine's bridesmaids froze in a row of pale pink satin, each one holding a champagne flute like it might provide legal counsel. Delphine turned on Simone, tears already shining. You hate me so much you brought a lawyer to my wedding? Aunt Josephine said, I brought pie too, but this place said outside food was a liability. Nobody laughed. Simone almost did. Delphine's voice rose. You have always been jealous, always, because Daddy loved being needed by you, because you got to be the good daughter while I was the selfish one, no matter what I did. Walter's face twisted. Simone stood slowly. You stole from him. I borrowed from family. You disguised charges. I was going to fix it. You told him an authorization code was for a ramp. Delphine sobbed once, turning toward the guests. She twists everything. She has been controlling Daddy's accounts for years. Ask anyone. She has all the passwords, all the documents. She could have moved anything. There it was. Simone felt the room tilt toward her. Not fully, not yet, but enough. Enough for people to look at the fat daughter with the binder and the tired eyes, the useful daughter, the unmarried daughter, the one who handled the money, the one who sounded angry. Anger made women look guilty in rooms that preferred tears. Matteo came down from the platform, voice low and sorrowful. Simone, we did not want to expose this, but there are irregularities tied to accounts you controlled. Bianca lifted her folder. There are records showing Delphine Vale initiated the disputed transactions. And there are records showing Simone had access, Matteo said. This is why we wanted to handle this privately. Julian's eyes sharpened. Simone realized, 1 second too late, that this was not Matteo improvising. This was the trap. The ballroom screens flickered. A staff member near the AV station looked alarmed. Julian turned his head sharply, but before anyone could stop it, the screens behind the band changed from wedding photos to bank transfer images, care account summaries, and a security still of Simone at an ATM 3 months earlier. A shocked murmur swept through the room. Simone stared at the screen. Her heart thudded once, hard. The ATM image was real. She had withdrawn cash for Walter's home aid when the agency's payment system failed. The transfer images were wrong, or incomplete, or edited. She could see it from where she stood. Dates without context. Amounts without memo lines. Her name circled in red like a wound. Matteo looked devastated. He deserved an award. I'm sorry, he said into the microphone, though his eyes were on Simone. We tried to protect the family from this. Delphine covered her mouth and cried beautifully. Helene stood, horrified. What is this? Simone could not speak for 1 second, not because she was guilty, because rage, real rage, sometimes became too large for language. Walter knocked 3 times. Then again. Then again. Nobody heard him at first. The room had become a machine made of whispers. Julian moved toward the AV booth, his men spreading through the room. Matteo stepped closer to Simone. Sit down, he said quietly, before you make it worse. Simone looked at him. You made fake slides for your wedding reception. His expression did not change. People believe what looks organized. Then you should have used better fonts. His eyes went flat. Walter typed furiously. The tablet spoke, but the whispers swallowed it. No permission. Simone raised her voice. Quiet. The room did not quiet. Julian turned from across the room. He did not shout. He only said, silence. The word fell like a blade. The ballroom obeyed. Simone looked around slowly, at the guests, at Delphine, at Matteo, at her mother, at the screens, at the beautiful flowers paid for with her father's stolen care money. Then she reached into her tote and took out the binder. Matteo's smile flickered. You want organized? Simone said. Great. I brought tabs. Aunt Josephine whispered. Lord, I love this child. Simone placed the binder on the table and opened it with a clean snap of the rings. The ATM withdrawal was for Home Care Plus on April 3rd. The agency's billing portal failed. Here is the invoice, the cash receipt signed by the aide supervisor, and the email from the agency apologizing for the system issue. The transfer you are showing from May 9th is missing the second page. Here is the full statement showing the money went to St. Agatha Rehab for speech therapy. The August payment, marked caregiver reimbursement, was not mine. It was issued to Delphine using Dad's authorization code after she told him it was for the wheelchair ramp. He confirmed that with Bianca Fontaine, attorney at law, on Wednesday at 2:17 p.m. The room held its breath. Bianca stood beside her. I witnessed Mr. Bellamy's confirmation. Matteo's jaw tightened. Julian's voice came from near the AV booth. The screen feed came from an outside device, not hotel media control. My people are tracing it. Delphine looked at Matteo, just for a second, but Simone saw it. Fear, not of the truth, of him. Simone turned a page. The Windermere Mobility Accommodation charge for $3,000 paid for floral column upgrades. The second charge paid for imported linen. The third paid a dessert deposit. The fourth paid a ballroom extension late fee. Walter Bellamy did not approve those charges. Walter knocked once. Yes. His tablet spoke. No. The guests went silent, in a different way now. A listening way. Matteo looked at Walter. You are being coached. The sentence was quiet. It was also the wrong sentence. Simone stepped between Matteo and her father before she knew she was moving. Say that again. Simone, Helene whispered. No. Simone's voice shook, but it did not break. No, we are not doing this politely anymore. He is not confused because he disagrees with you. He is not coached because he can answer. He is not a symbol in your toast, or a wallet in your wedding plan, or a sad little old man people get to pat while ignoring his words. He said no. That means no. Walter's eyes filled. Julian watched her from across the room with an expression so still it felt almost dangerous. Delphine's tears changed. Less performance now, more panic. Simone, please. Simone looked at her. Did you use his money? Delphine shook her head too quickly. Did you tell him the authorization code was for a ramp? Delphine backed up one step. Did you? Matteo reached for her arm. Do not answer that. The guests heard it. Everyone heard it. Delphine pulled away from his hand, then seemed shocked by herself. You said it would be fine, she whispered. Matteo's face went cold. The whole room shifted. Delphine looked around, realizing too late that the words had left her mouth alive. I mean the paperwork. He said the paperwork was fine. Julian walked back toward the center of the room. Which paperwork? Delphine shook her head. I don't know. You signed vendor approvals, Simone said. You requested reimbursements. You don't understand what it was like. Delphine's voice rose, cracking. Everything was already in motion. Deposits, contracts, Matteo's family, the photographers, the press. Daddy always said he wanted us taken care of. Walter knocked twice. No. He would have wanted me to have something beautiful, Delphine said, crying harder now. After everything, after the hospitals, after all of us suffering, why is Simone the only one allowed to take from this family? Her whole life is Daddy. She gets his time, his attention, his apartment, his accounts, and I ask for one day, one perfect day, and suddenly I'm a monster. Simone stared at her sister. There it was, finally, not an apology, not truth, the wound under the theft. Delphine had not seen Walter's money as his care. She had seen it as a family treasure Simone was guarding unfairly. She had looked at medications and aids and accessible transportation and seen attention she was not getting. Walter's face crumpled. That almost broke Simone. Then Delphine said the sentence that finished the room. It would have been mine eventually anyway. No one moved. Even Matteo closed his eyes for half a second. Aunt Josephine whispered, "Oh, baby." Helene sat down like her body had given up on standing. Walter looked at Delphine as if he had been struck. Simone wanted to cover his ears, his eyes, his heart. She could do none of those things without treating him exactly how they did. So she stood beside him and let the truth be terrible. Julian's voice was very quiet. "Mrs. Vale, this reception is over." Delphine turned toward him, stunned. "You can't." "I can. This is my wedding. This is my hotel." "You said you didn't own it," Simone muttered through a throat full of fire. Julian did not look away from Delphine. "I lied. Under different circumstances, Simone might have laughed. Matteo moved then, not toward Julian, toward Walter's tablet. It happened fast enough that later, people would argue about what they saw. Simone saw everything. Matteo's hand shot out, his face calm, his body angled, as if he meant only to steady himself. But his fingers went for the tablet mount. If he got it, if he ripped it free, Walter's voice disappeared from the room. Simone stepped in front of him. He hit her shoulder hard enough to knock her backward into the chair. Delphine grabbed at the same moment, maybe to stop him, maybe to stop Simone, maybe because panic makes people honest and stupid. Her hand caught the chair behind Simone's knees. The chair slid. For one weightless instant, Simone saw the chandelier above her, bright and cold as a frozen sun. Then she hit the marble. The glass broke under her palm. The room gasped. The story had caught up with itself. Pain flashed white through Simone's hand. Her ears rang. Someone shouted her name. Walter's fist slammed the chair once, twice, 3 times. Aunt Josephine cursed, in a way that made a nearby priest cross himself. Delphine stood above Simone, hand still half extended, face twisted with horror and fury, and the terrible knowledge that this time everyone had seen. Julian arrived before Simone could breathe. Not running. Julian did not run, but one moment he was across the room, and the next he was there, crouched beside her, his hand hovering near her wrist without touching. "Simone, I'm fine," she said automatically. Blood slid down her palm. His eyes darkened. "You are not." I said fine, not bloodless. The corner of his mouth did not move. His face had become the kind of calm men should fear. Walter knocked again and again. The tablet, still attached, spoke after his shaking hand hit the emergency phrase Simone had programmed months ago. "Listen to me." The artificial voice filled the ballroom. Everyone stopped. Walter's body trembled with effort. His face was wet now. He did not hide it. His hand moved over the tablet, slow, angry, alive. Simone tried to sit up, but Julian's hand finally touched her elbow, steadying, not holding. Walter typed, "My money, my choice." The voice rang clear. "No wedding." Delphine made a broken sound. "Daddy." Walter's eyes stayed on the tablet. "No permission." He swallowed hard, then typed the longest sentence he had managed all day. It took time. No one dared rush him. Not now. Not with blood on the floor, and the bride shaking, and the Mafia boss watching, like judgment had found a suit. The tablet spoke. Simone told truth. Simone closed her eyes. For the first time all day, she felt something inside her loosen. Not enough to heal, enough to breathe. Julian stood slowly. He looked at Delphine first, then Matteo. "Security will escort the bride and groom to a private room. They will not leave with documents, devices, or access to hotel systems. Police have been notified regarding assault and financial exploitation. My legal team will provide the hotel records." Matteo laughed softly. "You think this makes you look clean, Julian?" The name sounded different from his mouth. Familiar, bitter. Julian looked at him. "No, I think it makes you look exposed." Matteo's eyes cut toward the guests, then the exits. Julian's men were already there. Every door had grown a shadow. "You have no idea what you are interfering with," Matteo said. Julian stepped closer. "I know exactly what I am interfering with." "That is why you are still breathing in public." A soft, frightened sound passed through the room. Simone, sitting on the floor with a bleeding hand and a torn dress, looked up at him. "Julian." His gaze dropped to her. She shook her head once. "Not here, not like that, not for her father, not in a room where the truth had finally become louder than fear." Something in his face changed. The cold did not vanish, but it obeyed him. He turned to his security. "Take him out." Matteo's mask cracked then. "Not completely, Enough. He looked at Delphine with pure contempt. You stupid woman. Delphine flinched as if he had slapped her. And that, more than the theft, more than the lies, more than the ruined wedding, told the room what kind of marriage had almost begun under the flowers. Simone saw her sister hear it too. Delphine looked very young for 1 second, young and terrified, and lost inside the beautiful dress she had stolen her way into. Simone did not forgive her, but some old part of her mourned anyway. Security took Matteo first. He did not fight. Men like him preferred rooms where other people did not see the struggle. Delphine tried to follow, but Bianca stepped into her path. Mrs. Vale, Bianca said, you need counsel. Delphine looked at Simone then, really looked, not at the dress, not at the body, not at the role she had assigned her, at Simone bleeding on the floor beside their father's wheelchair. Simone, she whispered. Simone waited for sorry. It did not come. Delphine said, what am I supposed to do now? And Simone knew, with a tired sadness deeper than anger, that her sister still thought consequences were something other people should manage for her. Aunt Josephine helped Simone stand, while Julian wrapped a clean white napkin around her palm with careful pressure. His hands were steady, warm, too gentle for a man who could make an entire ballroom afraid by breathing quietly. You need stitches, he said. I need cake. No, that cake owes my father money. Walter made a sound, small, rough, almost a laugh. Simone looked at him and smiled through the pain. See? Dad agrees. The tablet spoke. Stitches, then cake. Julian's mouth softened. Sensible man. The reception ended not with a final dance, but with guests leaving in glittering confusion, police entering through the side corridor, and hotel staff quietly removing champagne glasses from tables no one wanted to sit at anymore. The flowers still smelled sweet. The candles still glowed. The cake still stood untouched in the corner, like a monument to bad decisions. Simone sat in a private hotel office while a medic cleaned her palm. Walter remained beside her, refusing to leave even when Julian offered a quieter room. Aunt Josephine hovered with the purse. Bianca spoke with officers. Helene sat on a sofa across from them, staring at nothing, her makeup streaked beneath both eyes. For once, she did not ask Simone to fix the silence. Julian stood near the door, speaking quietly into his phone in Italian. Simone did not understand the words. She understood the tone, controlled fury. Not wild, not performative, directed. When the medic finished wrapping her hand, Simone looked at Walter. Well, that was festive. He typed. Proud. She read the word before the tablet spoke. Her eyes burned. Dad. The voice said it anyway. Proud. Simone turned her face away and pressed her uninjured hand against her mouth. Julian ended his call. He looked at her, but did not come closer. Maybe he understood that some moments were not his to enter. Walter typed again. Home. Simone nodded. Yes, we're going home. Helene looked up. Her lips parted like she wanted to ask where she belonged now. Simone had no answer for that yet. Maybe Walter did. Maybe he did not. Some things would take more than one ruined wedding to repair. As they left the office, Simone paused in the doorway. Through the hall, she could see the ballroom being cleared. Staff moved between tables, gathering napkins, blowing out candles, lifting fallen flowers from the floor. The head table stood half dismantled. Her chair had been taken away. The place where she fell had already been cleaned. That bothered her for reasons she could not name. Julian appeared beside her. They had to remove the glass. I know. They photographed it first. She looked at him. Of course you did. Evidence matters. Simone stared at the polished marble, now shining like nothing had happened. That is the problem with beautiful places. They clean up too fast. Julian was quiet. She glanced at him. Did you know the screen thing would happen? No. Did you suspect? Yes. And you let us walk in. His eyes held hers. Your father chose to walk in. You chose to walk in. I prepared as much as I could without taking that choice from you. Simone wanted to argue. She wanted to be angry, because anger was easier than admitting how close he had come to understanding the line she spent her life defending. Protect, but do not own. Help, but do not erase. Stand close, but do not stand in front unless asked. So she only said, that was almost a very good answer. His eyes warmed slightly. Almost. You still lurk. I am standing. With a lurking attitude. This time he did smile. Small, brief, real enough to make her look away first. Walter knocked once from beside them. Simone turned. What? The tablet spoke. Cake. Aunt Josephine lifted a covered plate from behind her purse, as if she had stolen communion silver. Already handled. Simone stared. When did you steal wedding cake? When the police came in. Nobody watches the old auntie during felony weather. Julian looked at the plate, then at Aunt Josephine, with something like respect. Impressive. She pointed at him. Don't flirt. I'm armed with frosting. Walter laughed then. Not cleanly, not easily, but enough. A rough, broken sound that filled the hallway and made every terrible thing pause for half a second. Simone leaned down and kissed his temple. Come on, Dad. Let's get you home before Aunt Josephine steals a centerpiece. Too late, Aunt Josephine said. And for the first time that day, Simone laughed too. Aunt Josephine had, in fact, stolen a centerpiece. Simone did not notice until they were halfway home and the back seat of Julian Marzano's very serious black car smelled like wedding cake, white roses, and felony confidence. The flowers sat on the floor between Aunt Josephine's shoes, wrapped in a linen napkin that definitely belonged to the Windermere Grand. Walter kept looking at them, then at Josephine, then at Simone, his mouth pulling crookedly every time like laughter was trying to climb out of a body that had forgotten the easiest path. Simone sat beside him, with her bandaged hand held against her chest and the blue binder on her lap. The binder had a smear of dried blood near the corner. She thought about cleaning it, then decided against it. Some records deserved stains. The city moved past the windows in silver and gold streaks. Evening had settled cold over the streets. People hurried under awnings. Couples stood outside restaurants. A man walked a tiny dog in a sweater that looked more expensive than Simone's first couch. Life continued with its rude little habits, and Simone wanted to be offended by that. Her sister had been taken from her own wedding reception by security. Her father had testified through a tablet in front of 200 guests. Matteo Vale had smiled until the smile finally broke. Simone had bled on marble, eaten stolen cake from a hotel napkin, and watched Julian Marzano quietly place an entire ballroom under his control without ever raising his voice. And outside, the city still wanted dinner. Walter tapped his tablet. Cake good. Simone looked down at him. That is your official review of the evening? One knock. Aunt Josephine leaned forward. He is right. Cake was excellent. Crime should never taste that much like lemon buttercream, but the Lord is mysterious. Simone laughed, then winced, because the stitches in her palm pulled. The medic had said 6 stitches, and a few days of keeping the hand dry. Simone had asked if rage counted as moisture. The medic had not enjoyed her. Walter had. Julian sat in the front passenger seat, speaking quietly with the driver. He had offered them another car, another escort, another room, another doctor, another everything, but Simone had only accepted the ride because Walter was exhausted, and because Aunt Josephine had said, "Baby, if the Mafia wants to beat traffic, let them." Julian had not corrected her. Simone suspected that meant traffic was one of the smaller systems he controlled. When the car stopped outside Walter and Simone's apartment building, Julian got out before the driver could come around. He opened Walter's door and waited, not touching the chair until Simone nodded. That almost annoyed her more than if he had been rude. She had spent so long fighting people who grabbed control that she did not know what to do with a man who stood close enough to help, but far enough to let her decide. "You can stop being decent," she said, guiding Walter's chair onto the sidewalk. "It is confusing." Julian looked at her bandaged hand. "I will try to disappoint you soon. Make it believable." Aunt Josephine climbed out with the centerpiece and cake plate. Julian watched her. "That belongs to my hotel," he said. She tucked the flowers under her arm. "Then bill the bride." For a second, Julian's face changed. A real smile, quick and unwilling, moved across it before he could hide it. Simone saw it. Aunt Josephine saw it too, and looked deeply satisfied. Walter's building elevator was broken again, because of course it was. The landlord had promised repairs for 3 months, with the dreamy confidence of a man who did not use a wheelchair. Simone felt her body brace for the familiar fight before she even reached the lobby. Julian noticed the handwritten sign taped to the elevator door. "Out of service. Thank you for your patience." His expression became very still. Simone pointed at him. "Do not murder the sign." "I was thinking about the landlord." "Also no," Walter typed. "Ramp call." Simone sighed. "Yes, Dad. I will call again tomorrow." Julian looked at her. "Again?" "That word is doing heroic work. We have called, emailed, certified mailed, complained, threatened to withhold rent, and once Aunt Josephine asked if the landlord wanted to meet Jesus through negligence." "I was polite," Aunt Josephine said. "You brought pamphlets and a flashlight, so he could see the way." Julian took out his phone. Simone's eyes narrowed. "What are you doing?" "Making a call." "No." He looked at her. "The elevator needs repair." "Yes. By legal pressure, city complaint, tenant action, and possibly Aunt Josephine's pamphlet ministry. Not by whatever shadowy landlord whisper network you are about to summon." Julian's thumb paused above the screen. "You are hurt. Your father is tired. The elevator is broken. And if you solve every practical problem with one phone call, people stop hearing the part where the system should have worked without you." He studied her for a long moment. The lobby light buzzed above them. Walter watched them both with interest that was far too awake for a man who had nearly slept through the last 10 blocks. Finally, Julian put the phone away. "Then tomorrow, I can put you in contact with a tenant rights attorney." Simone blinked. That was suspiciously reasonable. "I am growing. Do it slower. I need time." Aunt Josephine muttered. "Lord, they flirt like tax audits." Simone ignored her so hard it was almost a sport. The driver and Julian helped carry Walter's chair up the stairs while Simone walked beside her father, one hand on his shoulder. Walter hated being carried, not because he was ungrateful, because every lifted step reminded him of what the world had refused to build properly. Julian seemed to understand that. He gave no speeches, made no soft sounds, offered no pity. He simply helped lift the chair carefully, silently, step by step, while Walter stared forward in the blue tie he had worn like armor. Inside the apartment, everything looked too ordinary. The folded blanket on the sofa, the tea mug by the sink, the crossword puzzle on the table, the plastic pill sorter beside the lamp. It seemed wrong that the apartment had not changed while they were gone. Simone had changed. Walter had changed. Somewhere in a hotel downtown, Delphine's perfect wedding had become a police report. But the apartment waited with the same tired patience it always had. Aunt Josephine put the stolen flowers in a chipped pitcher. Walter noticed, and knocked once. "Yes," Simone said. "They look better here." Julian remained near the door, his hands at his sides. "Bianca will call in the morning. The police will need statements. but she will make sure they speak to your father properly. Walter knocked once. Simone glanced at Julian, and Matteo. The air shifted around his name. Julian's eyes cooled. He is in custody for now. The public charges will begin with assault, fraud, and attempted destruction of evidence. The rest depends on what the ledgers prove. And the private charges? Simone asked, before she could stop herself. Aunt Josephine went still. Walter's eyes moved to Julian. Julian's gaze stayed on Simone. You are asking if I will hurt him? Yes. The answer sat there between them, dangerous and honest. Julian looked toward Walter, then back at her. Not for you. Not for this. Simone's throat tightened. She had not realized she needed that answer until he gave it. He continued, voice low. Men like Matteo expect violence. They prepare for it. They understand it. What they fear is records. Courts, frozen accounts, rival men seeing proof that they used a disabled man's medical fund as a shield and still failed. I will not make him a corpse people whisper about. I will make him a file no one wants attached to their name. Simone let out a slow breath. That was almost poetic. It was accounting. Even scarier. Walter typed. Good. Julian nodded once to him. Good night, Mr. Bellamy. Walter typed again. Thank you. The tablet voice was plain. Julian stood very still after it spoke. You are welcome, he said. When he left, the apartment felt warmer and emptier at the same time. Simone helped Walter out of his suit and into pajamas. The blue tie came off last. He touched it before she folded it. His fingers rested on the silk with a kind of farewell, but not a sad one. More like he had taken something back and was ready to put it away on his own terms. You were incredible today, Simone said. He typed slowly. You too. She sat on the edge of his bed. I fell in front of rich people. His eyes softened. The tablet spoke. Still stood. Simone looked down at her bandaged hand. Pain pulsed beneath the gauze. Her body ached in places that would introduce themselves more rudely tomorrow. Her heart felt like it had been dragged across marble and then asked to fill out forms. But her father was looking at her with pride, and for once, the truth had not been swallowed by the room. Yeah, she whispered, we did. The days after the wedding did not become peaceful. Simone wished stories worked that way, but life was never polite enough to end at the dramatic part. The dramatic part was only the doorway. After it came statements, calls, forms, meetings, more forms, requests for clarification, bank holds, legal notices, ugly texts from relatives, delicate voicemails from guests who had suddenly remembered important details, and a very strange message from one of Delphine's bridesmaids asking if the cake vendor still had leftovers. Simone ignored that one for her own spiritual health. Bianca took charge of the legal path with calm, terrifying grace. She met with Walter at the apartment the next morning and placed every question in front of him directly. Not to Simone, not around him, to him. When the police came for his statement, Bianca stopped the first officer halfway through his opening sentence because he asked Simone what Walter meant. You may ask Mr. Bellamy, Bianca said. He will answer in his own way. The officer looked embarrassed, then corrected himself. Walter watched him for a long second, then knocked once, as if granting temporary parole. Julian's evidence came in waves. Hotel ledgers, vendor emails, security logs, payment paths, internal codes, message timestamps. One folder showed that the so-called accessibility upgrades had been split across multiple labels to avoid easy review. Another showed Delphine requesting reimbursements from Walter's account days after vendor invoices arrived. A third tied Matteo to outside accounts, fake consulting fees, and men whose names made Julian's attorney pause before saying them aloud. Then the forensic accountant found the full shape of it. $120,000 over 18 months. Simone read the number on Bianca's printed report while sitting at her kitchen table. For a moment, she did not understand it. Numbers were usually her friends. They stood still. They told the truth. But this one seemed too large to belong in her family. $120,000, hidden as caregiver reimbursements, disguised as medical equipment, labeled as transport, folded into wedding deposits, pulled from accounts meant for Walter's care, comfort, therapy, repairs, and future. Walter sat across from her, waiting. Simone placed the report in front of him. She did not summarize first. She had promised herself she would stop softening the blow of his own life. He read slowly. His eyes moved line by line. By the end, his face had gone gray. "Dad," she said softly. He lifted one hand. "Wait." So she waited. He typed with difficulty. 18 months? One knock means yes, she said, then hated the habit immediately. Sorry. Yes. 18 months. His eyes closed. She wanted to say she should have found it sooner. She wanted to lay her guilt on the table like another document. But Walter opened his eyes before she could. He typed, "Not yours." The words struck her so hard she could not breathe. "Dad, not yours." The tablet repeated it in its clear, simple voice, and Simone felt something inside her crack. She had been holding that guilt in both hands, without realizing how heavy it had become. She was the one who managed the bills. She was the one with the binders. She was the one who should have noticed the pattern before the pattern grew teeth. But Walter was telling her no. Not yours. Not everything broken belonged to the person who finally found the break. She lowered her head and cried into her uninjured hand, while Walter reached across the table and rested his fingers against her wrist. By the end of the second week, Delphine was charged with financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult, embezzlement, and battery. The word vulnerable made Walter furious. Bianca explained that legal language was sometimes useful, even when it felt insulting. Walter typed, "Still hate," and Bianca said she understood, which made him like her more. Delphine's first statement claimed confusion. Her second blamed Matteo. Her third blamed Simone. Her fourth, given through an attorney who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else, finally admitted she had used Walter's authorization for expenses she knew were not medical. She still called it borrowing. Simone read that part twice, then put the paper down before she damaged furniture. Helene did not ask Simone to fix it. That was new. She came to the apartment one rainy afternoon with soup in a glass container and no speech prepared. Simone almost did not let her in. Walter knocked once. So she did. Helene entered quietly, set the soup on the counter, and stood there with wet hair at her temples and no makeup on her mouth. "I visited Delphine," she said. Simone stiffened. Helene nodded, as if she deserved the reaction. "She is angry." "That must have been a short visit. She says you destroyed her life." Simone looked away. Walter knocked 3 times. Helene turned to him. "I told her no." The room changed. Simone looked at her mother. Helene's eyes filled, but she did not perform the tears. She let them stand there. "I told her she destroyed her life when she decided your father's needs were less important than being admired. I should have said it sooner." Walter watched her. "She asked me to tell the lawyer you misunderstood the charges," Helene continued. "I said I would not." Simone did not know what to do with the sudden ache in her chest. It was not forgiveness. It was not trust. But it was something. A door unlatching, maybe. Not opening. "Not yet," Walter typed. "Thank you." Helene sat down and cried quietly. This time, no one rushed to make her stop. Matteo's consequences moved on 2 tracks, one public and one hidden behind doors Simone did not want open too wide. Publicly, He faced charges tied to fraud, assault, and financial schemes that reached far beyond the wedding. His business partners disappeared from headlines with impressive speed. His social pages vanished. Men who had once smiled beside him in photographs began saying they had only met him briefly. Privately, according to Julian, Matteo had lost something more dangerous than money. He had lost usefulness. "What does that mean?" Simone asked one night. She and Julian were standing outside St. Agatha after Walter's therapy appointment. The air smelled like rain on pavement. Julian had arrived without being asked, carrying coffee and a paper bag of pastries from the bakery below Bianca's office. Simone had accused him of bribery. He had said it was breakfast. Walter had typed both. "It means," Julian said carefully, "that the men he wanted to impress now see him as a liability." "Will they hurt him?" Julian looked at the traffic moving past the curb. "Not while the courts are watching closely." That was not the comforting sentence you thought it was. No, it was the honest one. Simone leaned against the low brick wall, careful with her healing hand. "I don't want blood near this. I know. I mean it. Not for me. Not for Dad. Not because you think it balances something." Julian turned to her. "I heard you the first time. Did you obey me the first time?" Something almost amused moved through his eyes. "Often, against my nature. Your nature needs hobbies. It seems to have found one." She looked at him sharply. He looked back, calm as ever, but there was something beneath it now. Not the cold hotel owner, not the dangerous man in the shadows. Something quieter, warmer, still dangerous probably. Simone was not stupid, but danger was not the only thing in him. She had seen him stop himself. She had seen him wait for Walter to answer. She had seen him put his phone away in the broken elevator lobby because she asked him not to solve the wrong part of the problem. Her heart, traitorous and badly supervised, noticed these things. "Do not look at me like that," she said. "How am I looking at you? Like I'm a puzzle and you enjoy taxes." His face softened. "I do not enjoy taxes." "So you admit the puzzle part." "I admit nothing without counsel. Coward. Frequently. Around you." That should not have affected her. It did anyway. Walter's therapy lasted 40 more minutes. Julian waited with her the entire time, not asking for gratitude, not filling the silence with impressive stories, not touching her hand, though his eyes went to the bandage once. Simone found that she liked the quiet with him. She did not have to perform ease. She did not have to become smaller. She did not have to make him comfortable with her anger. He seemed to understand that her sharp edges were not a flaw in the design. They were part of the structure holding the roof up. A month after the wedding, Walter moved into the assisted living apartment. The decision had been his. That mattered so much, Simone repeated it to herself each time guilt tried to knock. The place was not one of those sad beige facilities where clocks seemed ashamed to move. It was a small, independent, assisted living community with wide doorways, a real garden, good staff ratios, and apartments that had kitchens because adults deserved midnight toast even after strokes. Bianca had recommended it. Simone had inspected it as if she were buying a small nation. Walter had rolled through the halls with suspicious eyes, tested the bathroom layout, asked 3 staff members direct questions through his tablet, and rejected the first apartment because the window faced a parking lot. The second apartment faced a courtyard with 2 maple trees and a fountain that made gentle noise over flat stones. Walter knocked once. Yes. Simone spent the first night before the move, sitting on his old apartment floor, surrounded by boxes, trying not to feel abandoned by the very independence she had fought to protect. Walter watched her from his chair. "I'm fine," she said without looking up. 2 knocks. She gave him a tired smile. "Rude," he typed. "You need life." She looked down at the roll of packing tape in her hand. I have a life. Walter waited. I have a job. I have you. I have enemies now, apparently. I have a binder with emotional depth. He typed again. Your life. That one hurt. She sat back on her heels. For years, Simone had told herself she was not disappearing. She was choosing to care for him, choosing to handle what others ignored, choosing to be useful, choosing to stand between Walter and the world's laziness. And all of that was true. But somewhere along the way, choice had become identity, and identity had become a room with no windows. What if I don't know what that looks like? She asked. Walter's face softened. The tablet spoke. Start small. So she did. After Walter moved, Simone went back to work at the hospital. Her promotion had been waiting before the wedding chaos, but she had delayed accepting because everything at home had been on fire. The hospital director called her into his office on a Wednesday and used phrases like exceptional operational oversight, patient advocacy, and leadership during crisis. Simone listened politely, then asked about salary, staffing authority, accessibility policy enforcement, and whether the position came with real power or just a better email signature. The director blinked. She smiled. I'm grieving my tolerance for vague opportunities. The promotion became real by Friday. She took it, but not as an ending, as a bridge. At night, after visiting Walter, and after answering emails from departments that suddenly discovered she had always been right about intake delays, Simone started building something of her own. Anchor Point Consulting began as a folder on her laptop, then a notebook, then a website draft, then a list of services written in plain language because frightened families did not need legal fog when they were already drowning. She would help people organize care records, review suspicious charges, prepare questions for banks, rehab centers, care agencies, and relatives with helpful smiles and strange access. She would teach families how to document the truth before lies became family history. Julian found out because Aunt Josephine told him. Simone was furious for 3 minutes, then tired. He arrived at her apartment with coffee, a used office printer, and a box of folders. No, she said from the doorway. You do not know what I brought. You brought expensive interference. I brought an unreliable printer from one of my older offices. She looked past him at the machine. That thing is the size of a dishwasher. It jams when afraid. That does sound affordable. And folders. I see that. You like folders. You cannot seduce a woman with office supplies. His gaze held hers. I was not certain. She stared at him, then laughed despite herself. He smiled, and the hallway light turned that smile into something softer than it had any right to be. Julian did not fund Anchor Point. Simone refused before he could offer, and he looked wise enough not to make the mistake anyway. But he did connect her with Bianca for a formal referral agreement. He introduced her to a retired forensic accountant named Marvin who wore sweater vests and had the soul of a hawk. He gave her the name of a web designer who owed him a favor but accepted normal invoices because Simone threatened to send every payment back in pennies. He helped without taking over. Mostly. When he drifted too close to command, she snapped. When she snapped, he listened. Not always immediately, but eventually. That was something. Their first real date happened by accident, though Aunt Josephine later claimed there was no such thing as accidental pasta. Simone had gone to Walter's new apartment for dinner. Julian had stopped by to deliver documents from Bianca. Aunt Josephine was there with enough food for a choir. Walter typed, "Stay," before Simone could object. Julian looked at her, not Walter, waiting. "Fine," she said. "But if you critique the source, my aunt will bury you in the courtyard." "I would never." Aunt Josephine pointed a spoon at him. Smart. They ate at Walter's small table near the window. Walter had chosen the table himself. Round, light wood, No sharp corners, just enough space for four. The maple leaves outside had begun to turn gold. Walter's tablet sat beside his plate. He used it often, sometimes for important things, sometimes to accuse Josephine of using too much oregano. Simone watched him choose his own meal, his own chair position, his own conversation. No one rushed him. No one answered for him. No one treated his pauses like empty space. After dinner, Julian helped wash dishes. Simone stood beside him at the sink, drying plates with one hand because her palm still pulled when she gripped too tightly. He had rolled up his sleeves, and she tried very hard not to notice his forearms. She failed in a dignified and private way. "You are staring," he said. "I am monitoring dish safety. My wrists are not a threat to the plates. Everything about you looks like it has been questioned by law enforcement." He handed her a clean bowl, some parts more than others. She nearly dropped it. His mouth curved. "Do not flirt while holding ceramics," she said. "Is that a rule?" "It is now." Behind them, Walter knocked once. Aunt Josephine said, "I agree with Walter." Simone turned. He did not say anything. Josephine smiled. "He has eyes." Julian looked down at the sink, and for the first time since Simone had known him, he seemed almost embarrassed. It was a small thing, ridiculous and human, and it warmed her more than any grand confession could have. Weeks passed, then months. The case moved slowly, because cases always did. Delphine took a plea eventually, not because she had fully accepted responsibility, but because the evidence had left her nowhere elegant to stand. Her sentence included restitution, probation restrictions, mandatory counseling, and community service tied to elder financial abuse prevention. Simone had complicated feelings about that last part. Aunt Josephine said God had a sense of humor and an excellent aim. Matteo's case was larger, colder, and less forgiving. The public reports focused on financial fraud, falsified billing channels, and organized laundering attempts through event contracts. His name became attached to words he had once thought belonged to lesser men: conspiracy, exploitation, wire fraud, assault, witness intimidation. His old friends vanished. His new enemies circled. Julian never gave Simone details beyond what was public, unless the details touched Walter's safety. She respected that. She also suspected it was his way of keeping some darkness out of her kitchen. One afternoon, Delphine wrote Simone a letter. Not a text, not a voicemail, a letter on plain paper, folded once. Simone left it unopened on her counter for 2 days. Then she took it to Walter's apartment. "You want to read it?" she asked him. 2 knocks. "No?" He typed. "Yours." So she read it alone in the courtyard while Walter watched birds argue over the fountain. The letter was not perfect. It was not even close. Delphine apologized, then explained too much. She admitted she had taken the money, then wrote 3 sentences about pressure and wedding expectations and Matteo's influence. She said she had resented Simone. She said she had resented Walter's stroke, then hated herself for resenting it. She said she was ashamed that some part of her had believed their father's money was already half memory, half inheritance. She did not ask forgiveness. That was the best part. She only said she was beginning to understand that Simone had not stolen their father from the family by caring for him. The family had abandoned the work and then complained that Simone was standing closest. Simone read that sentence 4 times. Then she folded the letter and cried, not because everything was repaired, but because one true sentence from a person who had hurt you could still find a tender place. She did not reply that day. Healing, she decided, did not need to be rushed just because someone finally said something useful. Anchor Point's first client was a woman named Renee, whose uncle's pension had begun disappearing into cash withdrawals after a cousin moved in to help. Simone met her at a coffee shop with Marvin on speakerphone and walked her through bank records line by line. The second client came from Bianca. The third came from a nurse at St. Agatha who said, "I know someone whose brother is handling their mom's money weird." By the sixth client, Simone had bought a better scanner. By the 10th, she had taken 2 days off from the hospital to handle consultations. By the 15th, the hospital director called her into his office again and asked if she was leaving. Simone sat across from him, hands folded. "Not yet," she said. He looked nervous. That sounded temporary. It was. She did not quit immediately. Practicality still lived in her bones. But she negotiated part-time consulting flexibility, trained 2 supervisors to handle the systems she had been carrying alone, and stopped believing everything would collapse if she stepped away. That belief, she realized, had been useful once. Then it had become a cage with a responsible-looking lock. Julian was there the day she signed the lease for Anchor Point's tiny first office. It sat on the 2nd floor of a brick building with an elevator that worked, because Simone had learned to treat elevators as moral documents. The office had 3 rooms, 1 crooked window, bad carpet, and a view of a bakery sign. Simone loved it immediately. Julian walked through the empty space, hands in his coat pockets. "It is small. It is mine." His face softened. "Then it is not small." She looked at him suspiciously. That was dangerously sweet. "I can insult the carpet. Please do. It has been waiting." "The carpet looks like it lost a custody battle." Simone burst out laughing. The sound bounced off the empty walls. Julian watched her like the room had become less empty because of it. He helped her assemble 2 bookshelves badly. She was delighted to discover there were things Julian Marzano could not intimidate into obedience. One shelf leaned so severely that Simone named it Delphine because it needed constant support and denied all wrongdoing. Julian threatened to buy better shelves. Simone threatened to end him with an Allen wrench. They compromised by calling Walter on video. Walter studied the shelf through the tablet camera, typed "bad," and hung up. By winter, Walter's courtyard maples had lost their leaves. He had grown stronger in small, stubborn ways. His speech did not return the way movies like to promise, but he gained clearer sounds, more control, more stamina with the tablet, and a social life Simone found both wonderful and insulting. He joined a card group. He flirted mildly with a retired librarian named Ms. Alvarez. He started complaining about the soup schedule in the dining room with such organized passion that the kitchen manager invited him to join the resident food committee just to contain him. Simone visited 3 times a week, then 2, then sometimes 1 if work became heavy and Walter had plans. The first time he told her not to come because he was busy, she stood in her kitchen holding her phone like he had fired her from motherhood. Julian found her there 20 minutes later, staring at a pot of pasta she had forgotten to salt. "He has poker," she said. "Walter?" "Yes. Good." "Good?" "I was replaced by cards. I doubt the cards can manage his insurance portal." "That is not the point." "What is the point?" She stirred the pasta too hard. "I don't know." Julian came closer, slow enough that she could step away if she wanted. She did not. "The point," he said, "may be that you built a door and he walked through it." Simone stared into the pot. Steam rose and blurred her eyes before tears could take credit. "I hate when you are right in my kitchen. It happens rarely. It happens annoyingly." He touched her shoulder with 2 fingers, a question more than a claim. She leaned back into his hand. That was how they became something, not with fireworks, not with a dramatic kiss in the rain, with pasta water, a father at poker, and a woman realizing that being needed was not the only way to be loved. The kiss came later that night, soft and careful in the doorway after dinner. Julian asked with his eyes first, because of course he did. Simone rolled hers and said, If you make this noble, I will shut the door. He smiled, then kissed her, like he had been waiting a long time, and had decided waiting was still part of the pleasure. He did not crowd her. He did not claim her. He touched her face with one hand and let her step closer. So she did. When he left, he looked back from the hallway. "You are lurking," she said. "I am admiring. Same coat, different pocket. Good night, Simone." She closed the door smiling, then leaned against it like an idiot for a full minute. Walter called immediately after, because apparently fatherhood came with surveillance powers. His tablet message appeared on her phone. "Shoes, man?" Simone replied. "Go play cards." He sent back one knock, as an audio file. Yes. Spring came slowly. Anchor Point opened officially on a rainy Monday, with no ribbon, no speech, and no expensive flowers, because Simone had complicated feelings about floral budgets now. Aunt Josephine brought grocery store daisies anyway. Walter came in a navy jacket and rolled through every room like an inspector. Helene arrived with coffee and did not cry until she saw Walter's name on the small framed mission statement near Simone's desk. Julian sent no giant arrangement, no dramatic gift, no public display. He arrived at lunch carrying sandwiches and a box of black pens Simone had once mentioned were the only ones that wrote smoothly on cheap paper. She stared at the box. "You remembered pens?" "I remember many things." "That is unsettlingly attractive." "I hoped so." Aunt Josephine, from the corner, said, "I heard that." "Good," Simone said. "Pray for him." Helene laughed. It surprised everyone, including Helene. There were still hard days. Delphine's restitution payments came slowly. Sometimes Helene visited her and returned quiet. Sometimes Walter refused to discuss her. Sometimes Simone missed her sister so suddenly it felt like stepping wrong on an old injury. Sometimes she hated her. Sometimes she hoped Delphine was eating badly seasoned food and learning humility through community service pamphlets. Sometimes she remembered two little girls under a blanket during thunderstorms and did not know where to put that memory. But the story did not belong to Delphine anymore. That was the difference. It did not belong to Matteo either, or Helene's silence, or bank managers who said sensitive when they meant inconvenient, or hotel ledgers that tried to bury theft under beautiful words. The story belonged to Walter, who had knocked until the room listened. It belonged to Simone, who had documented the truth until nobody could deny it. It belonged, in a strange way, to every person who had ever been told that being tired made them unreliable, that being angry made them cruel, that being useful meant staying quiet. The final call came on a Thursday evening, though Simone did not know it was final at first. Final things rarely introduced themselves. They came in wearing ordinary shoes. She was at Walter's apartment with Aunt Josephine and Julian. Rain tapped softly against the windows. The courtyard fountain had been turned back on after winter, and the sound filled the room like low music. Walter sat at his round table with a plate of Josephine's chicken, his tablet beside him. Julian stood in the kitchen doorway holding a dish towel, because Simone had learned he was better at drying dishes than assembling shelves. Aunt Josephine was telling a story about a church treasurer who thought nobody would notice missing raffle money, which was foolish because church ladies noticed everything, including hair dye and cash flow. Walter typed something and turned the tablet toward the room. "This is family." No one moved. The words were simple. 4 words. Nothing fancy. Nothing dressed up. But they changed the air. Helene was not there that night. Delphine was not there. The old family table had not been restored like a fairy tale after a curse. Maybe someday there would be another chair. Maybe not. Family, Simone had learned, was not only blood arranged around a room. It was who made space, who listened, who waited for the tablet, who brought pie, who handed you the pen without taking the paper. Simone looked at Walter. Her eyes burned. "Yeah, Dad," she said softly. "It is." Julian's hand brushed hers under the edge of the table. Not a claim, a promise. She turned her palm and let their fingers link. Then her business phone rang. Everyone looked at it. The number was unknown. Aunt Josephine said, "If that is the cake vendor, tell them I regret nothing." Simone picked up the phone and answered with the voice she had practiced for months. Calm, warm, ready. Anchor Point Consulting. "This is Simone." For a second, there was only breathing on the other end. Frightened breathing, the kind that had been held too long. A woman said, "I'm sorry. I don't know if I called the right place. My brother says I stole from our father's care fund, but I didn't. I think he moved the money, and now everyone believes him because I handled the bills. I don't know what records I need. I don't know how to make them listen." Simone went still. Across the table, Walter watched her. Aunt Josephine's face softened. Julian reached toward the stack of blank folders on the sideboard and silently slid one across the table. Then he placed a black pen on top of it. Smooth ink, good weight, the kind she liked. Simone looked at the folder, then at Julian. He did not speak. He did not need to. She smiled. Not because the story was starting again in the same painful way, because this time someone frightened had found the right door before the room swallowed her whole. Simone pulled the folder closer with her healed hand. The scar across her palm was pale now, thin and stubborn, a small line where glass had tried to make her let go. She opened the folder. "Tell me what records you already have," she said. And while rain tapped the window, while Walter smiled from his chair, while Aunt Josephine reached for another slice of cake she had absolutely hidden from everyone, while Julian stood beside Simone with quiet pride and no need to own the moment, the truth began again. Not loudly, not beautifully, but clearly. And this time, Simone Bellamy was ready.